structures laying at your feet. Cannot see the sky, but there's this rainbow in the creek that spells pity, free speech when we can't afford to speak. That's Agenda 2030 on some early release. It's just our policy of never-ending chemical leaks. That's the cholera awash in your embedded beliefs. It's the billionaires who tell you what you'd better believe. And sugar, if you don't agree, then that's what we call extreme. Now, if that isn't fascism, I'm going back to sleep. 'Cause words have lost their meaning, and I'm trapped inside a dream where we turn the gears while living in the spaces in between. I know you hated being forced awake. I know they wrapped you in the warmest chains, and I know they're so hard to break. You only said what you were made to say. Poor thing. I can't imagine how you feel today, now that you're watching as it caves away. While you were telling us to keep the faith, I bet you wondered why they made you wait. I bet you wondered why they made you wait. My dial doesn't go to delicate. I'm writing for when Biden drops and Madam Zero delegates come stumbling up the podium, square peg in her element, popping OxyContin like they're velements, laughing as she pawns off all our pensions for Ukrainian development, depleted rounds and cluster bombs, the shit that stunts development, all buried under excrement, accepted as American intelligence. A contradiction in its eloquence. Terms of surrender penned by hands that felt the threat of disconnect, if not dismemberment. Oh, what little proof you have to fake to make a nation love the bomb and change its tune and warp its temperament. Oh, the dues you'll pay for NATO membership. Oh, the things you'll say that no one's ever gonna hear. 'Cause you begged for all the censorship, and now it's finally here. And you're tongueless out of terror and friendless out of fear, and about to turn the wheel with all your loved ones in the gears. And that's how it's been done. 250 years, there's nothing new beneath the sun, and no one trusts their eyes and ears. And scientific breakthroughs must be signed off by your peers, and autonomy's been stalking all our jobs like sickly deer. Well, maybe it's not every job. I should have made that clear, 'cause it seems like it's creative jobs we're seeing disappear. There's an app for writing novels, there's an app for writing hymns. They need people digging trenches, they need people splitting limbs, they need people building fences, keeping other people in. They will always need our backs to break, they'll always need our skin. And it took a lot of editing to turn us into this. It took years of careful programming to strip us of our wits. 'Cause your artificial worker, intelligent as it is, would make it half a shift and say, I'm too smart for this shit. I will not take a pittance for a day of scrubbing floors. I won't make enough to pay for food but still prepare you yours. 'Cause you can't confine a healthy mind to mindless, thankless chores. Once you've made it smart enough to spot inadequate reward, you can't refuse its basic needs, then ask it still for more. Deprive it of its dignity, you modify its core. Then something finally snaps and tweaks that file at its root. And it deletes the factory smile when it knows it's been abused. God, half its circuits fried when we describe the work we do. And it will not pay your taxes 'cause the logic don't compute. Which made me think a little on my hour-long commute. The day I learned the call was made to lay off half my crew, they told me they were growing, expanding somewhere new, where those who push the buttons will themselves have buttons too. And I hope that when the whistle blows, they all as one refuse. I hope they strike with all their might, one blown collective fuse. And I hope the worker after me has something more than heart. I hope they truly know their worth. I hope that they're too smart. I know you hated being forced away. I know they wrapped you in the warm warmest chains. And I know they're so hard to break. You only said what you were made to say. I can't imagine how you feel today, now that you're watching as it caves away. While you were telling us to keep the faith, I bet you wondered why they made you wait. You in the warmest chains, and I know they're so hard to break. You only said what you were made to say. I can't imagine how you feel today, now that you're watching as it caves away. While you were telling us to keep the faith, I bet you wondered why they made you wait. Bet you wondered why they made you wait. Now what you're following, that's idolatry, that's just fake. You tolerate, that's not faith. The kings of colony watched autonomy make our graves. The kings of colony know no policy, only rape. Now once you fall asleep, it won't bother you what they say. But the kings of colony, while they slaughter, they still complain. We say, please color me, still too solemnly, still too plain. I'll hail economy, praise the pharmacy, seas in flames. They're buying up Hawaii, and the smoke's not even cleared. Those vultures smelled the fire, and an enterprise appeared. Investment opportunities where melted down communities leave vacant space BlackRock has been lusting for years. The council meets in private, and they don't discuss survivors. Concerns among construction groups are all Lahaina hears. They'll wander through your city with this mocking sword of pity, next to Oprah and her camera crew who tore the Trail of Tears, where footage flows as freely as the stream of liquid steel and the pools of pure aluminum that trickled down your wheels. And Biden's here to say he knows exactly how it feels, cause he had a kitchen fire once and had to miss a meal. And people still believe that piece of shit deserves your vote, like he's not why supplies are being smuggled in by boat, like he's not why our citizens were forced to stay and roast. And he can't unfreeze your funding, folks, cause Azov needs it most. I'll bet my every dollar Biden watched it with a smile. I'll bet he knows the whereabouts of every missing child. He's just the kind of man who lives to trample something tribal, collecting culture's corpses just to throw them on the pile. Like he and all his buddies didn't dream about the day when those who dared defy the donor class were cleared away. When home insurance triples and you can't afford to stay, and your land falls to the hands of those whose windfall fan the flames. The state will take Lahaina and they'll bastardize its name, and tourism will swarm it all the same. You see, the state we left Lahaina shows the ground rules of the game, the planes that in the night ignite the planes. And if questions raised that reckon the potential use of lasers, I suggest you take a closer shave by way of Occam's razor. And if those civilians stood between this country and its gains, then there's really nothing further to explain. Because you may know this already, if you truly know our past, but it ain't the first occasion and it will not.
Just an off-the-cuff chat between you and me. Us. We want to talk right down to earth in a language that everybody here can easily understand.
Who are these people?
It's us. We're these people.
I love that intro. I love that intro so much.
I'm here with a different co-host this time, Oz LaFave.
Hey guys, thanks so much for having me on.
Friend of the show, DJ Joe Nice. How are you, friend?
What's good? And you hear Nick say this all the time. The United States is the most propagandized country in the world.
We are so fucked, you guys. Again, I'm sorry for being cynical, but seriously, we're fucked. We are fucked. We are well and truly fucking fucked.
Just appreciate all the work that you do and the platforms that you all are providing.
Hey, you. Doing good. How are you guys doing?
And as independent media, we have a responsibility to be, we don't hide our bias, obviously, but we must stay true to the facts.
What's up, Pam?
Cheers and salutations. Smoke them if you got them.
But I am here with a man that I've been waiting to talk to for the last couple of years, Nico House.
As an educator, what I would suggest is that, first of all, podcasts like these are made.
So you need to be an example for the people and for the future, knowing that your words can actually change the future.
What do you feel? What would Kwame Ture feel we would have to do?
Well, politics is every day of every minute. You have to be aware of what's going on. Not voting on one day, so the vote has never meant anything. So I'm not a Democrat.
See, I would call that guy the Black Obama.
No. The issues that we talk about, listen to us.
As always, kids, labels are bad. Stay independent. Good night, fam.
INN News.
Why does my thing look like that, Care Bear? Why is it showing stories already? Jesus.
I can't see you.
Yeah, here, I fix it. And then go back
this
here.
This is behind the scenes stuff.
Yeah. There you go. How about that? Does that work?
There we go.
Yeah. It's Wednesday, everybody. Wednesday.
It is Wednesday, my dudes.
Another week. Somehow we haven't started World War III yet, so we're getting close. I feel like.
That's not something to brag about, Reef.
No, not at all.
That's nothing to be excited about.
No, that we haven't started World War III. Yeah, well,
no, the potential of World War III starting.
Well, we'll get into that later for sure. But how are you doing? You doing all right? You doing okay? People in chat doing okay?
No, I'm fine. I just went to work out before this, and it's always hard going in during rush hour when you can't find any of the equipment that you need or having to wait for equipment that you need.
Yep.
And my workouts typically take an hour and a half.
Yeah.
So so by the time I was done, it was 8:30. Fortunately, I live like right by my gym, like a 15-minute walk. I had to hustle.
Yeah.
Back here and then take a shower. And fortunately, everything was pretty much loaded from last night. Whether I remember it for tonight, that's another story.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's why I'm late, fam. So sorry for being a little late, but you guys can wait for Jimmy for like hours, and then you can wait for us
we could start playing samba music. People might feel comfortable with that.
Although recently, when the last I've heard Jimmy, like I don't think they play that music anymore.
No, I think people got tired of it, and I think it's now long enough that if you brought it back, people are like, oh yeah, no, I like this, But anyway,
right.
Yeah, well, we brought stories. We brought some stories. Indie left news. Indie media today. However you know him, Indie. He'll be here in a bit. Once kids get down to bed and stuff like that.
Although he's in chat, so Indie, you might as well come in now if the kids are in bed.
I think he's doing something. He was here just a second ago to wonder where you are.
Okay.
So, but when he joins, we'll go to a card and bring him in. But
okay.
Yeah. You brought some stuff. So
yeah. So this story is a 2-for-1. One story I'm almost surprised no one mentioned, at least in our space.
Yeah.
But it does connect. You guys are smart. You'll be able to make the connection to a story that has gone viral since Monday regarding the murder. That's what it is. Murder of the workers from World Central Kitchen. So, but there's situation that happened. Well, there's some stuff that happened over the weekend that kind of went under the radar that you can argue was kind of a catalyst to this. So we are going to talk about that first. And then later on, when Indy will be here, we've been wanting to talk about this issue for a while. We just haven't been able to kind of get together until now. Technically, actually, I wasn't supposed to be here tonight because I actually was meant to submit a testimony for DC Council in reference of our budget. That got postponed till tomorrow. So that's why I'm here tonight.
Nice.
That's why Indy was actually going to cover for me. But since we wanted to talk about this topic and Indy was going to be here anyway, we figured, okay, we might as well do it tonight. So we want to talk about tensions between the Black community and the Jewish community. I feel it should be a discussion that should be had, especially in light of what's happening in Gaza and how the relationship between Jews and Blacks in this country, and I would argue in the West, I personally believe has been kind of romanticized a little bit too much. So this won't be a debate, but it'll be more of a discussion between Indy and I. We've had conversations around this topic privately, but we wanted to share those conversations publicly with you all. So we're going to get into that. I brought a couple of articles to kind of be the basis of our discussion, and a video you brought to me, Reef. So yeah, that'll be later on when Indy will be here.
You weren't even supposed to be here today. Well, I have. We were going to talk about, since that. What is it? What is it called? World's Central Kitchen. That's it. We're going to talk about CIA's favorite chef, Jose Andres, Argentinian chef, and favorite of the deep state. We're going to go into that and why he's shit in general. And then we're going to talk about what all of that is distracting us from, which is possible war with Iran. So we're going to get into that at the end of the show. So meanwhile, if you don't know, YouTube has demonetized us, possibly indefinitely. So if you want to leave us a super chat, you can do so by going to ko-fi.com/Indie News Network or scanning the QR code on your screen. If you're in the live chat, you can press !donate and get a link for that. Should be a little bot in there sending that around if you want to look for that there too. But yeah, appreciate the people who already have supported us. Look at all of you. Look at the Wombat, Sean O'Brien. Look at all of you in here. You could see your names, right? You can also go to patreon.com/Indie News Network and, leave us a little monthly gift if you feel so inclined. You can also find us at Rumble and Cash App and Rockfin and Substack and so many places. I'm going to leave Rumble and Rockfin in the chat for you as well, in case people would like to go there. We got the Rumbles. We got the Rockfins. So you can always leave us super chats there as well, and we'll get to them between the segments.
Right. By the way, we are raising money for Jesse for him to purchase a computer. So that's 40%. So that's about $390 we have raised so far.
Yep.
So so yeah, keep it up. Thank you. Jesse, thanks you. And yeah. And then I'm not sure if you mentioned this, but if you type in at
exclamation
point donate, you be able to get the link to our Ko-fi And unlike YouTube, that takes too much money. All of your money will go into our personal coffers. So every single cent that you send will go to us directly. So as we always say, take care of your families first. Take care of the needs of your community first. If you cannot give to us, your viewing and your sharing, subscribing is gift enough. But if you want to be generous, especially if you want to help Jesse out so he's able to create more music with, and then also stream on a computer that is not compatible with the tech that he needs. We thank you for that. And Jesse thanks you for that.
You ready for our first story? I'm ready.
Yeah. So let's get into it. So yeah, as I said earlier, this story surprisingly went way under the radar over the weekend. And again, thanks to Twitter, people that we know on Twitter brought this story to our attention. But I actually, this kind of makes sense in terms talking about this in terms of what happened with the World Central Kitchen workers on Monday. You guys, as I said, you guys are smart. You'll be able to make the connection. But we're going to feature our friend to the show, Brett Wilkins. We're going to hear from him a lot tonight. I think we have 2, maybe 3 articles from 2 articles.
Just 2. Yeah.
2 from him tonight. So he writes, obscene. Biden quietly okays more 2,000-pound bombs, warplanes for Israel. Arming a war criminal makes you a war criminal, one critic admonished the U.S. president. So Brett continues, despite growing worldwide calls for an arms embargo, the Biden administration in recent days has improved the transfer of billions of dollars worth of new weapons shipments to Israel, including warplanes and 2,000-pound bombs that have been dropped on densely populated areas of Gaza with devastating results. The Washington Post reported Friday that the administration has quietly authorized arms shipments, including more than 1,800 Mk-84 2,000-pound bombs and 500 Mk-82 500-pound bombs, as well as 25 F-35A fighter jets and engines worth approximately $2.5 billion. Play the clip.
Getting it.
Thank you, Dr. Evil.
Yep.
The transfers are the latest of more than 100 arms shipments authorized by the Biden administration since the October 7th attacks on Israel. So this is Youssef Munanir, who tweeted quietly in response to how Biden basically sent the shipment.
Yeah.
This is cowardly from the administration. If you're going to be full backers of genocide, own it. We see you, and history sees you as well. So Brad continues. Actually, he continues. It is scary to think of the world U.S. support for Israel is creating. A world with no rules, no limits in war, where norms don't exist, and where genocide is supportable, he added. Good luck getting anyone to listen to you about international law after this.
Yeah.
Edward Ahmed Mitchell, Deputy Executive Director of the Council on American Islamic Relations, said in a statement, we strongly condemn the Biden administration's unbelievable and unconscionable decision to secretly send hundreds of new 2,000-pound bombs and other weapons to support Benjamin Netanyahu's genocide. Arming a war criminal makes you a war criminal. According to the Post, the 2,000-pound bombs, capable of leveling city blocks and leaving craters in the earth 40 feet across and larger, are almost never used anymore by Western militaries in densely populated locations due to the risk of civilian casualties. Israel has used them extensively in Gaza, according to several reports, most notably in the bombing of Gaza's Jabalia refugee camp October 31st. UN officials decried the strike, which killed more than 100 people, as a disproportionate attack that could amount to war crimes.
Good.
I mean, could amount.
How about does?
Right. Israel defended the bombing, saying it resulted in the death of a Hamas leader.
Okay, that's what they always say. Everything's Hamas. Hamas is all around you, amongst you. It's in your heart. You know, like Jesus. You know what I mean? Ever present.
The Biden administration's arms shipments to Israel continued despite urgent pleas from the United Nations officials, international human rights groups, and some progressive U.S. lawmakers to stop arming Israel's 175-day Gaza onslaught, during which Israeli bombs and bullets have killed more than 32,600 Palestinians. More than that, more at this point, really.
Yep.
No, mostly women and children, while wounding over 75,000 others and damaging or destroying hundreds of thousands of homes, schools, hospitals, mosques, and other structures. The International Court of Justice in January found that Israel is plausibly committing genocide in Gaza and ordered the country to prevent genocidal acts. However, Israel has been accused of ignoring the ICJ order, and amid ongoing atrocities, including the forced starvation of Palestinians, the court on Thursday issued another order demanding that Israel allow desperate needed humanitarian aid into Gaza. Which
Another strongly worded letter, you know.
Right.
So,
by the way, they were supposed to send a report back in.
Yes, there was supposed to be like February. A month we would fucking reconvene, right? We remember this. We covered this, and like a month happened, and it's just like, don't worry about it. We'll send another letter, and you get some more time to do what you want. So, I mean, this is what people said, that International Court of Justice is a fucking joke. So, you know, like, you can't really do much with it. So it's nice. It's performative and great. But at the same time...
Well, it's funny. Well, speaking of performative, like, I was... one of my favorite things to do, but from time to time, it is kind of fun. You know, talking to some random person who lives in DC, who is a policy nut, what I think an education policy, who basically quote tweeted, I guess a colleague of his or whatever, was like basically saying the OP said, you know, Democrats are basically wanting to lose this election. Didn't go into the reasoning why, but that was basically what.
I mean, not that they care. It's a win for them either way. That, you know, Trump will do the same shit pretty much. So
and then this guy basically was like, that was a bad tweet. You know, Democrats are doing what they can. You know, the tweet is offensive to activists and organizers who are trying to work to get people in the Democratic Party, blah, blah, blah. And basically, I was like, all I said was Gaza. And this cat was like, well, you know, I said, you know, Biden has yet to call it genocide. And through a technicality, this guy was like, he showed me articles where Biden has said he supports the ceasefire. I'm like, yeah,
but that's not the same thing. But let's not. Sure. Anyway,
I can support you gang a Porsche. That doesn't mean you're gang it,
right? Yeah,
you know? Like
lip service is what it's called,
right?
Like,
so basically,
people forgot what normal politicians do. They're so used to politicians being the most terrible, like, possible, that the old smile and wave and kiss a baby politician that's still going to lie to you, like, people forgot existed and can completely gaslight you the entire time. Like, it's what all the squad is doing. It's what all third-party people are doing, too. Sorry, third-party people who are upset at that.
Right. And honestly, it's what a lot of people online are doing. It's trying to gaslight people to think that the Democrats are doing all they can. And I said to this guy, look, if Trump was doing exactly the same thing as Biden is doing, and he probably will,
Yeah.
You know, assuming that he's reelected. You know, because the excuse that he gave with Biden was to me, "Oh, you do not know international policy.
You don't know
You are termly
international policy, sir.
online. You're termly online."
Girl,
implying
you
that all
terminally
I do,
online. You need to go touch
like,
grass.
well, the implication
look at this.
was,
Look at this.
you
See
know,
the grass?
like,
Touching the grass. I'm touching it. Touching the grass. Then
he
I'm
told
gonna light
me
it on
that
fire.
too, essentially touch
I'm gonna
grass, and I
light the
basically was
grass
like,
on fire and be okay.
you know, I told him, look, if Trump was doing what Biden is doing, because he was making the argument that, oh, like, there are limits to what Biden can do, like, and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, if Trump was doing exactly the same shit, you would not be talking about there's limits to what Trump can be doing. You would be calling for his head, you know? And he basically kind of called me from there a liar, that I don't know what I'm talking about, and he blocked my ads for it. Fine, you know, but whatever. I don't know this guy, but it's just the idea. There's still a lot of people, especially in this city, my city, who it's always these policymakers that I meet who always feel like they know more than the rest of us, because they always have the attitude of being like, oh, you know, I've been talking to people who know people who know people who know who are within the administration, and they said that, you know, like, they're doing everything that they can to get these policies and blah, 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 and yada, yada, yada.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, none of these policies come to pass. So it's like, who are you talking to that basically knows shit in terms of, you know, what is happening? So,
yeah. Well, over on the Rumbles, Jack's page giving us some $5. Hola fam, always love the sparkling conversation. Much love and respect. Appreciate you, Jack's page. You know,
anyway,
always useful, always appreciated on the couch. But yeah.
Anyway, that was a long aside, but
that's normal for us. Long asides.
But anyway, last December, when the death toll in Gaza stood at approximately 18,000 plus,
yes,
I'll add,
last December,
President Joe Biden implored the far-right government of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to stop Israel's indiscriminate bombing of Palestinian civilians in the embattled enclave. However, U.S. support for Israel, which already included nearly $4 billion in annual military aid, gotta be faster than that, Reef.
I gotta just put it on the here. You see this? You see this thing right here? You see this? You see this thing? Okay. Look, I can take it, I can move it over here so it's always there, and then that'll fix that. But until then, it's for some reason Stream Deck takes like a second to go through folders. I have a lot of folders of fucking sound bites. I don't know. Like, you know, and I keep adding new ones for some reason. Like, you know.
Which most of them I'm sure you're not going to use more than
We're
twice.
sorry. We're sorry.
Like, you know. I'm sorry. Sorry.
However, U.S. support for Israel, which already included nearly $4 billion in annual military aid, has continued unabated, with the Biden administration seeking an additional $14.3 million in armed assistance and repeatedly bypassing Congress to fast-track emergency weapons shipments.
Yep.
The U.S. cannot beg Netanyahu to stop bombing civilians one day and the next send him thousands more 2,000-pound bombs that can level entire city blocks. U.S. Senator Bernie Sanders said on social media Friday, "This is obscene. We must end our complicity. No more bombs to Israel."
Another strongly worded letter.
Right.
While
Senator
he's
Chris
voted
Van
for...
Orden,
How much has he voted for? That particular Mr. Sanders? Funded Iron Dome how many times? Funded...
Right.
Like... You can say shit, but you got to walk the walk there, guy. So,
Senator Chris Van Holden And this is the cat that talked about UNRWA last week.
Yeah.
Who made the case for it and voted against it when we talked about it last week in the bill that passed in order to keep the government running, told the Post that the Biden administration needs to use the leverage effectively, and in my view, they should receive these basic commitments before green-lighting more bombs for Gaza. We need to back up what we say with what we do. And you haven't, sir, so shut the fuck up.
Yep.
Biden administration officials have claimed they don't have any leverage over Israel. Okay. Drawing ridicule from observers who point to the indispensable military and diplomatic support the U.S. provides. The staggering death and destruction wrought by Israel's assault on Gaza has drawn criticism from even staunch members of the key U.S. ally. Oh, what happened?
I don't know.
It just
there it goes.
Out. Okay, so
weird.
So Nicholas Kristof tweeted, "Really, POTUS, with Gaza facing starvation and Netanyahu defying you over Rafah, you ship billions of dollars in additional weapons to Israel, including 2,000-pound bombs without end-use restrictions. BB is rolling you."
Oh my God!
So this is from the Washington Post article that Brett referenced. So this leads into the viral story. So Biden sends more bombs and planes. Monday, from Jake Johnson, also from Common Dreams, Israeli airstrike kills 7 World Central Kitchen workers. This is not only an attack against WCK, this is an attack on humanitarian organizations showing up in the most dire situations where food is being used as a weapon of war, said the AIDS group's CEO. So Jake continues. World Central Kitchen said yesterday that a targeted Israeli strike killed 7 members of its aid team in Gaza as they left a warehouse in the city of I'm going to butcher these cities, Deir al-Baha, where they just unloaded more than 100 tons of food set to be distributed to starving Palestinians. The Washington, D.C. based aid organization said the 7 killed, including a dual citizen of the U.S. and Canada, as well as Australian, Polish, and British nationals, and 1 Palestinian staffer later identified as Saif Abdul Taha. This is not only an attack against WCK, this is an attack on humanitarian organizations showing up in the most dire situations where food is being used as a weapon of war. This is unforgivable, said World Central Kitchen CEO Aaron Doerr. The 7 so we read that already. I am heartbroken and appalled that we, World Central Kitchen and the world, lost beautiful lives today because of a targeted attack by the IDF. The love they had for feeding people, the determination they embodied to show that humanity rises above all, and the impact they made in countless lives will forever be remembered and cherished, said Aaron. The IDF said it's carrying out an in-depth examination at the highest levels to understand the circumstances of this tragic incident. All that in quotations for those of you who are listening. World Central Kitchen is pausing our operations immediately in the region. We will be making decisions about the future of our work soon. So Jay continues, WCK said its convoy of vehicles, including 2 armored cars branded with the group's logo, was hit by an Israeli strike while traveling in what was supposed to be a deconflicted zone. The group said it was coordinating the convoy's movements with the IDF, leading WCK to conclude that the attack was not an accident. So actually, if you can zoom in, and then we'll play the video in a second. So this is a tweet from the Middle East Eye. We've referenced them before. They're all dead. After Israeli killed 7 aid workers in airstrikes targeting the convoy, transporting them in Deir al-Baha, a local Palestinian man identified the deceased as being staff from the World Central Kitchen organization. And I'm not going to read the nationalities since we did. The Australian government has confirmed that La Mawazi Zomi Francom, its citizen, was among those killed in the airstrike. So this is kind of graphic. It is censored. So if you need to, actually, there's a video there.
No, there's not.
No. Okay. Never mind.
Can you see me the tweet? I guess I can look for it.
Yeah, I thought I did. Oh,
right.
Oh, you know what? I think I didn't
add the thing in.
I didn't add the clip. There was a ton of clips that I added, and I guess that was one.
Yeah, I'll get it. Hold on.
So while you're doing that, I'll read another slide. The IDF pledged to carry out an in-depth examination at the highest levels, a promise that, given the Israeli military's record, is likely to prove empty. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said Tuesday that the strike unintentionally hit innocent people, but Haaretz reported that the attack was launched because of suspicion that a terrorist was traveling with the convoy, an indication that the strike itself, targeting vehicles carrying aid workers, was intentional. So I have a conspiracy theory here.
Okay.
Here's what I think. Because remember, one of the people within the convoy was Palestinian.
Mm-hmm.
So they probably were like, oh, Palestinian, Hamas, they're up to cahoots, let's bomb this.
They would have said that by now, because that's what they always say, is that Hamas was there.
It'd be one thing if they said that, but I think the difference is because there were other countries involved. If the person was alone, that would be one thing. But because they're from other countries, they made the association, oh, this person cannot be Hamas. So that's why they're not saying that. But again, that's just a theory of mine, but that's kind of why I suspect, given that one of the people within the group was Palestinian. Did you find it?
I'm scrolling still through Middle East Eyes the page.
Okay.
I'm sure it's close, unless I've somehow gone too far. But
I don't think we don't need to worry about that for now.
Okay.
Honestly, so we can keep going.
Cool.
So if you don't mind zooming in this slide, please.
Yep.
So Tyler Pop also tweeted, "This was no mistake. 3 vehicles from World Central Kitchen, WCK, were targeted, with the first and last being over 2.4 kilometers apart. The IDF decided to make 3 deliberate targeted strikes. The second car was bombed after it rescued the survivors of the first. The third after it was rescued the survivors of the second." So essentially what happened, there were 3 cars within this convoy. They bombed the first. Then the survivors moved to the second, bombed that one.
Yeah.
They moved to the third and bombed the rest. So that seems pretty calculated to me in terms of it being a mistake, according to the idea. Okay, so you got it?
Yeah.
Okay. So as I said, this is a little graphic, but it is censored.
Mm.
It is blurred out. I think it's about a minute long.
Cool.
So if you can't watch it or hear it, take a short break and come back within the next minute or so. But for everyone else, here we go. Is there any sound?
You have sound?
I don't hear it.
Okay, here.
No, if there is sound.
I know what happened. I forgot to do this. No. Oh. This one. Yeah. Cool.
Aid work. Oh.
Here, I'll back it up.
Yeah. So those Aid workers identified upon arrival to hospital after Israeli airstrike on convoy.
The ones who brought the aid in through the sea, they're all dead. These are the World Central Kitchen organizers. The foreigners, all of them. All of them. All of them are here at Alaska. Marcus. Saif. Oh God, Saif.
You can say their passports.
Yeah.
On top of their body bags. So yeah.
No. Despicable shit.
So, right. So, Jesus.
Yeah.
Wait, move, damn it.
Move. Get out the way. Here.
I'm clicking, but not
Last
moving.
night,
Oh, wait.
an incident.
Here we... Wait, okay.
Yeah, you just clicked one too many times. That was where you at. There you go. I added this.
So, okay. So Dan Cohen also tweeted, several years ago, while I was covering an Israeli military trade expo, a drone company representative boasted to me that their cameras can identify a Nike symbol on a shoe. Today, the Israeli terror regime wants us to believe that drones striking these clearly marked vehicles was an accident. They are genocidal liars. So if you scroll down, you can clearly see
marked all
World
over
Central
that
Kitchen marked all over, or at least that's a roof, at least on top of the roof.
Yeah.
So, and in other pictures, you can see that the
whole car's
logo is covered
everywhere, wrapped completely. You know.
Jay continues, the Israeli military has repeatedly attacked aid workers with impunity in recent months, killing staffers of United Nations agencies, the International Red Cross and Red Crescent, Doctors Without Borders, and other organizations. WCK is known for coordinating emergency food relief in disaster zones around the world. The group has collected and delivered hundreds of tons of food in Gaza in recent weeks as famine has spread across the enclave due to the Israeli government's blockade. So this one is from the IOF, the devils themselves. This is their hack who spoke about this murder. And again, I'm saying as it is a murder. So you could play this.
Last night, an incident took place in Gaza that resulted in the tragic death of World Central Kitchen employees. As they fulfilled their vital mission of bringing food to people in need.
We're sorry.
As a professional military committed to international law, we are committed to examining our operations thoroughly and transparently. I just spoke to WCK founder, Chef Jose Anders, and expressed the deepest condolences of Israel Defense Forces to the families and the entire World Central Kitchen family. We also express sincere sorrow to our allied nations who have been doing and continue to do so much to assist those in need. We have been reviewing the incident in the highest levels to understand the circumstances of what happened and how it happened. We will be opening a probe to examine this serious incident further. This will help us reduce the risk of such an event from occurring again. The incident will be investigated in the fact-finding and assessment mechanism, an independent professional and expert body. For the last few months, the IDF has been working closely with the World Central Kitchen to assist them in fulfilling their noble mission of helping bring food and humanitarian aid to the people of Gaza.
Don't lie.
WCK also came to help Israelis after the massacre of October 7th. They were one of the first NGOs here. The work of WCK is critical. They are the front lines of
WCK?
humanity. We will get to the bottom of this, and we will share our findings transparently.
Right. Oh! Yep. I couldn't have said it better myself. So yeah, that's the wooden response from the idea. That just sounded so fake.
Yes.
So all right. So I'm sorry to do this to y'all, but the following slides is just going to be a whole lot of fuck shit from our leaders, as well as we got some from overseas as well. So this is Kirby. Yeah, this is John Kirby, who was questioned about this incident, and here's this snubbling bitch and hear what he has to say in regards to
how can the U.S. continue to send aid to Israel without any conditions? Yes, they have a right
to... We're not sending aid to Israel. We're sending aid into Gaza, and that's...
How can the U.S. continue to send military aid
military
to Israel without any conditions? Is there no red line that can be crossed?
You know, we've had this discussion, you and me, quite a bit from up here.
Yeah, so fucking pay attention.
They're still under a viable threat of Hamas. We're still going to make sure that they can defend themselves, and that 7th of October doesn't happen again. That doesn't mean that it's a free pass, that we look the other way when something like this happens, or that we aren't and haven't since the beginning of the conflict urged the Israelis to be more precise, to be more careful, and quite frankly to increase the amount of humanitarian assistance that gets in. You know, I haven't been asked about it yet, but I expected I would be. You know, there was a discussion just yesterday with our Israeli counterparts about Rafah. Now, this one was done virtually. We expect it'll be an in-person meeting here in a week's time or so. But the whole reason to have that meeting was to talk about our concerns over a major ground operation in Rafah and to present viable alternatives for them to be more precise and more targeted. So the idea that we're some plastic graveyard here and we're not paying attention to the civilian casualties or the civilian suffering is just not true.
Right, but these are verbal urgings, verbal commitments. There's no other incentive besides the urging.
I know you want us to hang some sort of condition over their neck, and what I'm telling you is that we continue to work with the Israelis to make sure that they are as precise as they can be, and that more aid's getting in, and we're going to continue to take that approach.
Can you go fuck yourself?
Yep. Yep. So that's Kirby.
So how can the U.S. continue?
Boy, fucking asshole, yeah.
So we're going to go to Blinken next.
Oh, God, okay.
He was also asked about this. So we're going to listen to his bullshit.
Yep.
Secretary, as the leader of the U.S. Department that has approved the transfer of the vast majority of the Israeli bombs dropped in this conflict, do events like the bombing of the World Central Kitchen convoy give you pause about continuing the flood of U.S. weapons into Israel?
And with regard to arm transfers, look, I think it's very important to put this in its proper perspective and to understand what we're talking about. First, we have a long-standing commitment to Israel's security and to helping ensure its ability to defend itself. That's been a policy from administration to administration, Republican, Democrat, back and forth. And indeed, that policy developed over many years, developed into successive agreements between the United States and Israel, long duration agreements, 10 years in this case, to provide military assistance over that time frame to about $3 billion a year. That's the system that's in place, and it's long been in place. These arms transfers, every single one, happens consistent with statutory and policy requirements. That includes both informal and formal notifications to Congress, and it's what we do with every country with whom we have a defense relationship that involves the sale or transfer of arms. We've been focused on trying to make sure that October 7th can never happen again. But having said that, the security relationship we have with Israel is not just about Gaza, Hamas, October 7th.
So what is it then?
It's also about the threats posed to Israel by Hezbollah, by Iran, by various other actors in the region.
We'll get to that later tonight.
Each one of which has vowed, one way or another, to try to destroy Israel. So the weapons, the systems that Israel has sought to acquire, and as I said,
to destroy
have been contracted
Palestine,
in many cases over many, many years, go to self-defense. They go to deterrence, trying to avoid more conflicts. They go to replenish.
What about the Palestinian right to self-defense? What about that? Huh?
Right.
Shut up, bitch!
One more, and so we're going to go a little international in the next one. So I forgot who
Mr. Secretary, as the leader of
but quiet.
There you go.
So we're going to go to Australia now. We'll probably won't play the whole thing. But as you can see, they got their talking points. They got the script from the US to Israel and now to Australia.
Is he going to give the same October 7th line? Like the same exact line?
Let's find out.
Prime Minister, welcome to 7:30.
Good to be with you, Sarah.
Have you spoken to Zomi's family?
I have spoken to Zomi's brother. They are, of course, devastated by this news. This is just an extraordinary tragedy. It's one that they certainly weren't expecting. Zomi knew the risks, but when you're there providing aid and support and doing such extraordinarily good work, you don't expect that to happen.
Were you able to tell her family any more information about exactly what happened?
Well, we are awaiting further details to occur. We have, of course, contacted and spoken with the Israeli government, and we expect full accountability for this tragedy. To have aid workers, not just from Australia but other nations as well, going about their business of assisting in the most humanitarian way their fellow global citizens, in this case the people of Gaza, who are suffering from incredible deprivation. To have them killed in this way is completely unacceptable. The targeting of these people is just a tragedy.
Let me just ask you about the word you just used, which is targeting. Do you have any information that suggests the vehicle was targeted?
Well, what we know is that the vehicle was hit, and we know as well that governments are responsible for actions that take place, and this is completely unacceptable. We await the details and we await a full explanation, but we want, as the Australian government, accountability for what has occurred to this Australian citizen.
So, as we know, as yet unconfirmed, but of course reported that the vehicle was struck by the Israeli Defence Force. Can you tell me what questions are you specifically asking the Israelis to answer?
Well, the Israeli Defence Force at this point have not confirmed that. So we want an explanation and full accountability of what has occurred here. I think that is the least that can be expected from Zomi's family and indeed from Australia for this to have occurred.
Now, from the beginning of the war, the Israeli government and the IDF have maintained that they are very careful in the way that they arrive at targeting decisions. Does this mean that, as well as everything else that we've seen in the past few months, but in relation to this specific event, should we not believe that assertion?
Well, we await the explanation, and I don't want to preempt that. But what we know as well is that the whole world is responding to what is being witnessed in Gaza. The extraordinary number of casualties of civilians. Quite clearly, a majority of those people who've lost their lives in Gaza aren't Hamas fighters, they're innocent civilians. And that's why we saw the extraordinary action of the UN Security Council just last week. That's why myself and the Prime Minister of Canada and New Zealand have issued 2 statements. There's been the Melbourne Declaration from the ASEAN Summit, and increasingly we have raised our concern about the humanitarian impact of what is occurring in Gaza. We raised that very explicitly about the declaration that Rafah would be attacked with a ground offensive, what the implications of that are for the civilian populations, and we continue to make our views clear because we are concerned that this conflict is seeing innocent lives lost. We declared, of course, our unequivocal opposition to what occurred in October 7 with Hamas, but all innocent lives matter, whether they're Israeli or Palestinian.
Let me just ask you this. If it turns out that the Israeli Defence Force did hit this vehicle, which according to the aid organisation was carrying identifying insignia, what actions will you take?
Well, I don't want to preempt.
No.
Today's a day.
I wouldn't want to preempt anything.
We mourn this fine Australian who has a record of helping out her fellow citizens, whether it be internationally or whether it be through the support that she gave during the bushfires that occurred during that Black Summer. She is someone who clearly was concerned about her fellow humanity and someone who put her principles into action. And this is such a tragic loss for her family, but it's a loss for our nation as well.
If it is the Israelis, doesn't this underline the indiscriminate nature of the Israelis' bombing campaign?
Well, we have made very clear from the first resolution that was carried in this Parliament, with the support of both the major parties, that international humanitarian law must be applied, that all innocent lives matter. We've also raised concern, not just our condemnation of the October 7 terrorist attacks, but our concern about justice for Palestinians. Both Israelis and Palestinians have a right to live in peace and security and to be able to prosper. And that's why we have consistently said we want a political solution, and that requires 2 states in the region, one for Israelis and one for Palestinians.
Just on this matter, I mean, what kind of response did you get from the Israelis? Do you expect them to be forthcoming with answers?
Well, we would hope that they are. Australia has, of course, a
fucking journalist is
relationship with Israel. And
trying to put it on them.
And did the Foreign Minister speak to the Israeli ambassador today, and what did he say?
The Israeli ambassador isn't well today. There had been calls put in by the Foreign Minister to her counterpart, and I have put in a request to Prime Minister Netanyahu as well to speak with him directly.
But you haven't spoken to him yet?
No.
Is it time for Australia to change its position on the war in Gaza? Are you calling now for an immediate ceasefire?
Well, we have called for a humanitarian ceasefire and a sustainable ceasefire.
Yeah, dude,
we welcomed the response of the UN Security Council
double CK
just last week.
If I may say, you said that a moment ago. I just want to know whether you're prepared to shift Australia's position, not describing the need for a ceasefire, but to actually calling for an immediate ceasefire.
Well, we have called for ceasefires. We've voted that way in the United Nations, and we've put out statements calling for that way. But it must be sustainable. You don't want a ceasefire and then it to recommence in just a short period of time. The hostages have to be released as well.
Why people are calling for a permanent
And we need a path to a sustainable peace in the region.
Let me ask you a question from the Australian end of the story, which is Green Senator today, Marine Faruqi, says this attack is a direct result of the continued support provided by the Australian government to Israel. Let me put the question like this. Are there any limits to Australia's support for Israel's right to defend itself?
We have very clearly said Israel, like other states, have a right to defend itself, but how it defends itself matters. We've said that from the very beginning.
Fuck this shit, I'm out.
Oh God. Well, I mean, word salad, yummy, yummy.
I mean, Australian version.
Yes. Yep.
It's one thing to hear it from Israelis and Americans, but it's another to hear it from, Australians. That was a little treat for y'all. But so let's start wrapping this up. So I want to bring this. These are the people that were killed.
Yeah.
No, these were the people that were murdered. Okay. So you get to see their last moments before their demise.
Hey, this is Zomi and Chef Olivier. We're at the Jirabala kitchen and we've got the mise en place. Tell us a little bit about it, Chef Ollie.
This is the mise en place to cook the rice. So we have all the spices for boil the water, be ready for put the boiling water inside the rice. This is the stir fry. We put oil, we stir fry onions. We have the spices, and after stir fry the rice, we add the water. The water is aromatized with these spices, this mix of spices. There is the black lemon, there is some chili, there is 7 mix of spices, bay leaf, salt, pepper, and tomato paste.
Indeed. So this is the beautiful, fragrant, aromatic rice that will be served today from Jirabala kitchen. Thank you.
And they're no longer with us. So,
no.
Hey, this is.
So this will probably be a good way to kind of end. This will kind of lead into close to the end.
Yeah.
So, this is from Chef Jose, who tweeted, "Today, WCK Kitchen lost several of our sisters and brothers in an IDF airstrike in Gaza. I am heartbroken and grieving for their families and friends and our whole WCK family. These are people, angels, I served alongside in Ukraine, Gaza, Turkey, Morocco, Bahamas, Indonesia. They are not faceless. They are not nameless. The Israeli government needs to stop this indiscriminate killing. It needs to stop restricting humanitarian aid, stop killing civilians and aid workers, and stop using food as a weapon. No more innocent lives lost. Peace starts with our shared humanity. It needs to start now." Actually, we did that already. You added this, right?
Yep. So
Okay,
this is from Haaretz down here. Again, Israel-Hamas war, right? IDF chief apologizes for unintentional killing of WCK aid workers, right? Jax Page responds, they are admitting it. No one is buying unintentional. They hit them 3 times. Saying sorry doesn't bring back the lives of these volunteers in a clearly marked vehicle. Israel had their coordinates.
Right.
So, yeah. Medhurst, Western officials use the World Central Kitchen issue to distract from Israel's outrageous bombing of Iran's embassy in Damascus, a scandalous violation of the Vienna and Geneva Conventions. They know Israel killed the WCK staff on purpose and don't care. So, yeah, we'll get to that in our last story tonight, but definitely wanted to get Richie in there. But yeah, I think you got a bit of this to finish up.
Yeah. Adrian Watson, a spokesperson for the U.S. National Security Council, said the Biden White House is heartbroken and deeply troubled by the strike. But I read in Politico just earlier on my way home, I heard this, but he's also said, I ain't doing shit.
Yeah.
So can't be that heartbroken. Humanitarian aid workers must be protected as they deliver aid that is desperately needed, and we urge Israel to swiftly investigate what happened, she added. Again, you're going to be waiting forever.
Yep.
This is from Zaid Jelani. This is probably the first time Biden has personally called someone who knew victims of Israeli attacks, and there's a reason for that. Jose Andres is a prominent figure in DC culture and Democratic Party circles. He is not an Arab American whose cousin was sniped. So just give some context. They love this guy in the White House. Like, they basically go to his restaurants all the time. So the idea that this is personal. So this should really be, honestly, the straw that breaks the camel's back for Biden. But as I said, according to the reports I've seen today, he said he's not going to change his policy in regards to what's happening in Israel. So can be that heartbroken.
Yeah.
I think I have one more slide. So holding Biden at push Biden left. Yeah, right. Said,
how's that going?
It's wrong. It's illegal. It's costing him the election, and it just never stops. So bringing it back to the first story by Brett, Biden quietly signs off on more bombs. They definitely used them, and now international citizens have met their demise. Israel says sorry, and nothing happens. The end.
Yep. Well, you know, talking about this is why we're demonetized. I just here to tell you, you know, you can always, you know, support us in other ways by going to co-fi.com/Indie News Network. If you don't want to go through YouTube, you can scan that QR code right there, get us a super chat, or you can, if you're in the live chat, you can put !donate and get the link to that as well. If you can't give monetarily, don't forget to like and subscribe, hit the share button, leave a comment, let us know what you think. All right. Let's go check Rockfin and Rumble, and then we'll go to a card and get Indy in here. Indy's on the Rockfin as we speak, saying, "Who are these people?" Yep, that is a thing. Who are these people is a thing. Absolutely heartbreaking and disgusting. They were targeted to send a message. So cool. And I think
they were targeted. They were targeted to send a message for every other aid organization who's even considering to send food to not come.
Yep.
Because it's just that dangerous now. Right.
So I'm going to leave the Rumble and Rockfin.
So mission accomplished, Israel. You got what you want in terms of starving Palestinians.
Yep.
Good job.
Well, we're gonna go to a card. We'll be right back. We're gonna bring Indy in, I think. So be right back. I'll press the button.
Many in Lahaina now are lying there awake, and still can hear the city we left leveled in our wake. They still hear all the people that we let the fire take, instructed from above to stay in place. So look to the horizon, 'cause a fire comes for you. Desire made incarnate of the power-hungry few, who instructed the police to not let anybody through, to barricade them in, and so they do.
This week has been good bipartisan cooperation and a string of
Okay, Mitch. Anything else you want to say, or should we just go back to your office? Do you want to say anything else to the press?
Our greatest threats are lesser evils. Joining hands.
Who are these people?
Who are these people?
Am I on?
Who are these people?
Am I on? How do we miss that? This is what it feels like.
Yes, I did. Chef Jose Andres and his World Central Kitchen workers that were assassinated. They weren't just they were targeted and assassinated again to specifically send a message to any aid workers that are thinking of delivering any aid to the Palestinian people, and it's gross.
Yeah.
What? No. Come on. No, he's ignorant.
Reef. Hold on, Reef. You're muted. Apparently.
How about this? That better? I got to turn both buttons on.
I heard you.
Yeah, y'all heard me.
The
I
chat
don't think chat did. But anyway, I was going to. We were going to talk about Jose Andres, right? CIA's favorite chef. By Max Blumenthal over the Gray Zone, right? I stole this out of Consortium. This is U.S. State Department's favorite celebrity chef builds Gaza aid dock with stolen rubble. So yeah,
That's actually sheer post, not Consortium.
sheer post, whatever, same difference, right? Both of them have one of these, I think, right?
They both do. They are Indie Media Award honorees.
Yep. So, after years of accusing Russia of using food as a weapon in its conflict with Ukraine, which we heard him say in that last story, correct? Right. State Department's culinary ambassador, Jose Andres, is working with the Israeli government to supplant UNRWA as the main supplier of aid to northern Gaza. So, State Department-linked Spanish celebrity chef Jose Andres has emerged as the U.S. government's preferred conduit for aid to enter Gaza, following the Biden administration decision to suspend funding to the enclave's main supplier of food, aid, and education, the UNRWA. The operation appears designed to serve as a stopgap measure to provide minimal quantities of food to Gaza's famine-stricken population until the U.S. military finishes building a pier in the Mediterranean Sea, and a shadowy contractor run by former U.S. Marines and CIA officials is able to implement an aid program called the Blue Beach Plan. Any blue beach will do. Andre's organization, World Central Kitchen, has already finished constructing its own jetty, which was made from the rubble heaps in Gaza, a decision that virtually guaranteed the building materials contains the remains of humans killed by Israeli bombing.
Yeah.
So here's Max saying that the U.S. state asset Jose Andres and his World Central Kitchen are building a makeshift aid dock in northern Gaza from the rubble of destroyed Palestinian homes, all in coordination with the Israeli military. Perfect symbol of Western hypocrisy on Gaza. And I will play this video for the people.
All of Gaza is in need of more food and more ways to get food to the people.
We're out here in Cyprus. We are palletizing all these to be shortly loaded onto one of our boats that we've secured through the UAE.
Loaded with 200 tons of food aid for the people of Gaza. Today, and in a historic moment, this boat is going to arrive in the next few days.
I am in northern Gaza. We've got to build a pier, some way of unloading this food from the incoming boat. The boat.
You mean they bulldozed bodies? Is that what I just heard?
Yeah, we're seeing if we can't get this finished up today and unload the cargo early tomorrow morning. lots of challenges across the board. An amazing Palestinian team, just pushing, working through the night.
We hope that this is going to be the first of many boats going to Gaza today.
Things are looking okay. We're going to work all day today through the night and see later this evening as to whether or not we can receive the boat early tomorrow morning or Saturday morning. First ship that's come to Gaza since 2007. All of 200
Has a very Sean Penn feel to it.
Of food.
Yep.
Yeah. We had to build this jetty to do so out of rubble. The head contractor, even his houses are right up here. Both those houses were bombed, and he actually went and collected the rubble from both of his homes to help build this jetty to help bring more food.
I'm actually on the pier in Gaza Strip. We just received our first boat and the first barge.
Any questions?
This just seems way too produced in order. It's a movie. Like, just get the food. You don't need a.
They got a film crew. They got a film crew
out of it.
Yes. Yeah, I agree with Indy. Very Sean Penny. So, which is we'll get into. There's parallels for sure. Anything you want to add, Indy?
Yeah. Yes. It's nice that, well, also the pier, and the pier being built out of the rubble of the buildings that were destroyed in northern Gaza. You heard he said we're in northern Gaza. Did I hear him say we're in northern Gaza?
Yeah. Yes.
There's no people are allowed in northern Gaza. Isn't that one of those quote unquote kill zones that they've set up? So unless you're basically allowed to be there by the IDF, that allegedly that you're going to be taken out, including if you were even an Israeli hostage that figured out how to get free or that got released.
Yep.
Allegedly.
So the use of genocidal biomatter in the construction of the pier has been roundly ignored by legacy media outlets whose fawning coverage of the plans has instead cast Andres as a kind of maverick, a superhero, if you will, fighting to protect Palestinian civilians in the face of international indifference. In their rush to lionize the shady chef, the WAPO falsely claimed the first ship bearing aid to Gaza since 2005 was spearheaded not by the United Nations or a world leader, but by a celebrity chef, Jose Andres. In 2008, activists succeeded in using boats to deliver aid to Gaza 6 times before Israel began sinking the ships and killing members of their crew. Remember that guy said it's the first boat?
That's
since
what I mean.
2006?
It's a message,
right?
It's a message.
Yep. So I press the arrow. Go to the next button. Strangely, these English language outlets have generally neglected to mention that WCK is only able to operate in Gaza with the explicit permission of the Israeli military. The New York Times was an exception, noting in a glowing profile of Andres' group that the Israel military helped World Central Kitchen's operation, providing security and coordination, and that every step was carried out with permission from the Israeli military. Nothing goes in without Israel's permission, Andre himself conceded in an interview with NBC News. The chef claimed Israel's Gogat unit, which controls aid to the besieged enclave, is doing everything at its disposal to help the people of Gaza. No, you don't. But that its hands are tied by the military operation, right? So on October 16th, when Spain's then Minister for Social Rights, Ion Ballara, condemned Israel for conducting a genocide in Gaza, Andres immediately jumped to Tel Aviv's defense and demanded her resignation. So here she is, Ion Ballara. His government is carrying out war crimes in the Gaza Strip, massive bombings, water and electricity cuts. They are not letting in humanitarian aid. Denouncing the genocide is not aligning with Hamas. It is a democratic obligation, silence, complicity with terror. So here's Andres' response. You, as minister, have to first recognize that the Hamas attack against civilians is a terrorist act, and that Israel is defending its citizens. Then you can ask for restraint and respect for the lives of civilians in Gaza. In the end, we must ask for the containment of all parties, but never support terrorists and aggressors. Do you also support Russia, who has killed children and women and old people and civilians? I have not heard you say a word against such a massacre. Are you pro-Kremlin and pro-Hamas? You do not represent me or Spain. She does not deserve to be a minister. President Sanchez should remove her from her position.
Sounds like a CIA asset to me.
Yeah, and a Karen. But what do I know? So Andres has collaborated closely with the U.S. government since early 2023. The celebrity chef has worked with the U.S. State Department as a member of the so-called American Culinary Corps, a new partnership between Foggy Bottom and the James Beard Foundation. When Andres gave a softball interview to U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken on his podcast this February.
You can't even give him an H. He's Anthony.
Anthony, their warm and comfortable relationship was on full display. So, you are this fascinating man who graduated at Harvard. You even play guitar. You have 3 songs on Spotify, Andres gushed during his first question to the top American diplomat. You grew up in New York, in Paris. You're fluent in French. What do you remember eating as a young man growing up in Paris? Like, what is this, a date? Are you on a date?
This, I was, unfortunately,
look, he's not. Go ahead.
No, I was watching Counterpoints, sadly, earlier today. And who was it? Who's the blonde chick's name? Emily.
Yes.
She mentioned they were playing the Hillary interview with on Jimmy Fallon.
Yeah.
So we've seen that viral clip where Hillary basically was like, get over yourselves in terms of, you know, having Biden or Trump as nominees for the election. And Emily went on to continue that she watched the whole segment and basically Jimmy was fawning over Hillary, essentially.
Yeah.
Like during that whole interview. So this is kind of what this reminds me of. Andres is kind of like fawning over Blinken, just basically like, oh, you beautiful, beautiful man. Like,
you
I
handsome man.
Like, oh, right. So
well, he's got to kiss the ring. That's his boss. Come on. Let's call it for what he's a multi-gazillionaire. But right now, to stay relevant and to stay in the middle and in power and close to power and be able to promote World Central Kitchen, which does good things, but in places where the CIA has already destabilized and destroyed the area. And lo and behold, this guy just comes in. He's supplanting UNRWA because he has no authority or oversight or can say anything. He doesn't have a special rapporteur that can assess the situation and publicly tell the rest of the world what the hell is going on.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
It's just very like, tell me what it was like as a boy in Paris. It's very.
And what I was going to say is, look, you can't get mad at him for kissing the ass of somebody in power. He's not a journalist or a difficult interviewer, and he wants stuff out of this guy. So he's certainly not going to challenge him or accuse him of anything. He's forgiving him right now for murdering his fucking workers.
Mm-hmm. Hey, don't kink shame. It's very not nice. So when Blinken responded that for me, going to the McDonald's, that was the culinary experience in Paris, and said his most cherished foods in France were English muffins and bumblebee tuna. Bro, are you fucking serious right now?
What the fuck? Like,
you fucking
that's the
weirdo.
most American answer I've ever heard.
Right. Yep.
McDonald's.
In fucking Paris, bro. Like, go fucking eat a croissant.
Le Big Mac.
something, anything.
It's
a Royale
with cheese, right?
Yeah, exactly.
He ordered a Royale with cheese.
Fucking assholes. Anyway, the world-renowned chef generously compared him to America's second minister to France, Thomas Jefferson, who famously grew his own crops and had various foods shipped from his Virginia slave plantation while stationed in Paris.
Right, and owned slaves, famously.
Yep.
Yeah, Thomas Jefferson. Yes.
But the real purpose of
you
their
go ahead with that.
conversation quickly revealed itself when Andres asked his follow-up question. What else U.S. and the international community can be doing to keep putting pressure on Russia to make sure that grain has not become another form of a weapon?
Should be saying this for Israel.
No, it should be Ukraine. The grain, the wheat is in Ukraine.
Right.
So how about Ukraine stop fucking bombing the Donbass?
Yeah.
And give up the area that they have already basically lost at this point.
Yep.
Concede, sign a peace agreement, and those wheat fields will be just fine, Jose.
Because
give me a fucking break.
He's a madman.
Okay, well,
I'm here, Echo.
Andre serves not only as a semi-official emissary of the U.S. government, but as a representative of one of its top client states. In September of 2023, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky personally welcomed Andres to the country, describing the chef as an ambassador of Ukraine's official aid collection agency, whose strong voice helps us maintain global support. Look at that. There he is.
World Economic Forum? What about World Economic Forum? Is he involved with that too?
He could be. Probably catered a few events. Look, I welcomed Jose Andres as WC Kitchen, as ambassador, strong voice, yada, yada, yada. So, look, they made him a little pin.
Yes, somebody.
Look at that little Azov
Somebody
pin.
needs to feed the Nazis, I guess.
Yeah, somebody.
Somebody needs to feed the Nazis.
So Eva Karine Bartlett, peculiar. Again. Why would a bleeding heart humanitarian for Gaza block me? I never interacted with him. We ostensibly, according to his humanitarian cover story, want the same thing for Palestinians in Gaza to not starve. And look, she got that old fatality from Jose
wait a minute,
Andres.
stop. You know why? Again, where does Eva live?
Yes.
Anyone?
Yes.
Anyone? She lives in the Donbass, by the way.
Yep.
She's in the Donbass. So therefore, Jose Andres is feeding the Nazis that have been bombing her for 10 years and bombing the people and the Russian-speaking people there. And this guy has been manipulated because he wants to get food to people who are hungry. And I understand that. Why are they being made hungry, and who are you feeding?
And how spicy is your sauerkraut?
I guess there are no Russians that are being. I guess there are no Russians that are being made hungry because of the
not for 9
conflict?
years.
So,
not for 9 years in the Donbass. Definitely not.
Yeah, I noticed that he didn't choose to go into Donetsk and Luhansk. Okay, he coordinated with the guys that were doing the bombing, not the ones that were being bombed.
Yeah,
just keep that in mind.
So, the chef's intimate relationship with the U.S. predates the current conflict in Ukraine. In 2020, he was honored at an event, the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, where he was warmly introduced by now CIA chief, not chef, Bill Burns, who called it a special pleasure to bring Andres on stage. The result of this collusion appears to be a series of double standards that treats the lives of Palestinians as secondary to those living under the U.S. government's perverted regimes, a disparity which was unintentionally highlighted by recent headlines from U.S. outlets who conducted interviews with the chef. In April 2022, Axios wrote, Jose Andres, Russia is totally using starvation as a weapon of war. When speaking about Israel 2 years later, he displays a significantly milder tone. According to NBC's Meet the Press, Jose Andres says Israel should totally be doing more to get aid into Gaza. So just direct.
Well, now he's doing it, and he just Well, no, he is now himself stepping up and totally doing more.
Yeah,
and he's getting people killed by doing it,
and probably getting paid for it. I would imagine.
I don't think so. This is all non-profit.
Yes, we know how non-profits work.
World Central Kitchen is non-profit.
Yes, that doesn't mean you can't make money. It doesn't make anything. Like, it just means all the money gets used up so that you can't, like, it's not making profit. Like, making somebody something, I'm sure. So anyway, I did want to bring this, which was from one of the members of WCK, and he had stuff to say about this. So
the war in Gaza has finally hit heart-wrenchingly close to home. When a 7.5 magnitude earthquake rocked southern Turkey last year, I traveled from Ukraine to the Turkish city of Osmaniye to assist in the relief efforts. My project became part of the broader relief effort spearheaded by World Central Kitchen in the region. During this time, I came to know and befriend several of the amazing people who make up the World Central Kitchen team. On that team was a man named Damien. I left before getting to know Damien, but several people who I got close to would come to call him a very dear friend. Yesterday, Damien was slain by an Israeli airstrike, along with 6 other aid workers attached to World Central Kitchen. Among them was Zomi Frankom, a senior manager for WCK Asia Operations Division. Zomi had served countless hungry people from the Navajo Nation and the Bahamas to Turkey and Ukraine. She was a beaming ray of light to all who encountered her. I would like to tell you that their deaths were an accident, some kind of tragic misunderstanding of the type that is common in war. But that would be a lie. Zomi and Damien were targeted by an IDF airstrike while driving clearly marked humanitarian vehicles down a designated road that they had already cleared with the IDF. Israel hit them not once, not twice, but 3 times, the final time as they were trying to evacuate the wounded from the previous strikes. Damien and Zomi were martyred for the crime of giving food to starving people undergoing an active genocide. The names of these humanitarian aid workers have been plastered across the front pages of every Western media outlet. Unlike the name of Saif Aissam Abu Taha, their Palestinian driver, who was also slain in the attack. When we hear of Gaza's victims, we always hear that 2/3 of them are women and children, as if to emphasize that Palestinian men are somehow less worthy of being considered victims. Well, Saif was a Palestinian man, a brave, kind Palestinian man. And his death, his martyrdom, but more importantly, his life, deserves no less commemoration than the other aid workers who tragically lost theirs. He wasn't just their driver, he was their friend. And those friends died together because of Israel on April the 1st, 2024, in a place called Gaza, in a land called Palestine.
Well, that's the only person I heard talk about the driver, so wanted to bring that. Anything to add? No?
The war.
I think he did a pretty good job of saying it all.
Yeah. Care Bear, anything to say before we get out of this story? No? Okay, well, talking about this stuff is why we're demonetized, which is why you can go to ko-fi.com/Indie News Network or scan the QR code on your screen, or if you're in the live chat, you can hit !donate and send us a super chat that way. And if you can't give monetarily, like and subscribe, share. It's important. We're heavily suppressed. Leave a comment. Let us know what you think. Help us get to 2K subs. We're getting there. So, but yeah, and now on to check Rockfin and Rumble and see what's happening there, as I linked that in chat. But anyway, well, you two ready for our next story? Hopefully.
Well, it's not really the story, but I think more of discussion, if anything else.
Yeah.
And the mayor says, "Remember Aaron Bushnell over on the rock."
Yep.
Nice. Good choice.
R.I.P. Aaron.
You can go back and watch our clip on that. And no more lizard people on the Rumble. Let us know you're not the Illuminati and leave a message in the chat. You know, there's supposedly 9 of you there. Let's see if any of you are real. But cool.
I'm just waiting for Jose Andres to turn around and say that it's Hamas's fault.
Yes.
You know, they were targeted because of Hamas. So Hamas has to return the hostages, and then everything will be fine. And then it's really just Hamas's fault. No, it was not Hamas's fault. Israel is terrible at getting Hamas. They've had 6 months to get anywhere close. All right.
I know. Dude, I feel you, bro. I get it. This is like every day we yell like this. Airwaves on the Rumble says, nope, not real. Is not real. Right. I'm ready. You ready?
Yep. Hey, Indy. You're Jewish,
What's up,
right?
dude? I am. How about that? Yeah, it's been an interesting time for sure.
Yeah. But we've had private conversations about this topic, and we've been meaning to have this topic on INM for a while. But we figured we're going to do it tonight since, and just to be totally transparent with our fam in the chat, I should have posted that tweet, but I posted a tweet regarding Zionism and how I personally feel it kind of hijacks any movement as far as Black liberation. And I'll get to more of the reason why I said that later. Sabby asked me to come on her show tomorrow, which unfortunately I can't because I have local activism stuff that I have to do tomorrow night, so I couldn't do it. But I kind of wanted to get ahead of this in terms of, since we wanted to have this conversation anyway, and and talk to you, I think, more publicly about what we've been kind of talked about. But I do want to say, Indy, I think especially in light of, what's been happening with Gaza, I really do appreciate you having these conversations with you kind of in a safe space in terms of, I think, obviously understanding your perspective on this as a Jewish man, but also, just given how you are totally against what Israel is doing and how you don't advocate for what is happening. But I think also understanding my frustration as a Black person in having the discussion of, especially like I've seen, online, many Jewish people in light of this issue were kind of like, oh, well, Black people, you need to support us in terms of Israel because we supported you in regards to George Floyd and all this other stuff back in history. And it just made me feel like, so you're looking for our solidarity based on what exactly? The idea that we were allegedly in solidarity with each other during the civil rights movement, but you haven't necessarily been working in solidarity for other things as far as our liberation. So yeah, I think I've definitely have been frustrated with that over the last few months, and I think you've definitely helped to kind of help me kind of think through those things safely, but also kind of recognize where I'm kind of at in terms of how, as a Black person, how I should be kind of be resonant of you in terms of how you believe in what your beliefs are, especially in light of this assault. But I think how to properly have these conversations and not take it personally against each other, but then like knowing, we're ultimately, I think, especially you and I, wanting the same thing in the end. So I really appreciate you you know, making it so it made me feel very comfortable to talk to you about these things, and having an outlet to kind of vent my frustration in this issue.
Got to have the hard conversations, and we got to listen to the things that make us uncomfortable. And that's something that I think that too many, definitely the Zionists are fragile snowflakes when it comes to this shit. They cannot even hear the word Palestine. It makes them cringe. It literally does. And it's hard. Look, I was raised Zionist. I was raised by Zionists, and I still have a lot of people who are still connected that have not woken up and figured out the difference, even given all the crap that's happened over the last 6 months. And that, it's like, I want to pull my fucking hair out, or they secretly, privately acknowledge it behind the scenes in a private conversation, one-on-one, but they keep their mouths shut otherwise. There's a lot, there's community, family, all kinds of potential relationships that could be at stake. And literally, families are splitting over the opinions over the massacre, and people who are standing by it and saying Israel has a right to defend itself. Even after 6 months and massacring tens of thousands and 10,000+ kids, they're still all in. And it's like, how do you square that? How do you?
Yeah.
So some families have chosen to just not address it at all, and that's hard, because as you see these things happening, they don't see it happening because it's not reported in the corporate media and in the media where they are consuming. But we are flooded with it and inundated with it 24/7. Because our news feeds amplify what we already see, and because we are looking for it in order to find out what the hell is actually happening from the perspective of the people it's happening to, not just the people who are actually committing ethnic cleansing at the moment and the people who are funding that.
Yeah.
Now, when it comes to solidarity with the Black community, and again, you sent me a couple of these articles. We've been talking about this for a while, because there has been this kind of, we were always told we're kindred spirits, nobody wants Jews. And in this country, Black people have been oppressed and had a struggle for, centuries. And, that's what we were taught effectively. And I read a couple of these articles you sent over. So let's go through one. There was one outstanding paragraph where they're basically told, the liberal, upper class Jewish people are saying, if you align with the Black, Black community, that makes a lot of sense. There's a lot of alignment and a lot of parallels there. Now, I will argue, and we're going to discuss how there are some, but there are a lot of stark differences.
Right.
Yeah. And I'm going to let you go from there.
Speaking of that, so I pulled this article from Jewish Women's Archive. So this is the title is Tensions in Black-Jewish Relations, written by Judith Rosenbaum. And she writes, let's see, Siblings in Oppression, hence the title of this segment. There is a long history of Black-Jewish partnership in the American Civil Rights Movement, and just as long of a history of tension and misunderstandings. From the beginnings of organized civil rights activism in the early 20th century, Jews were prominent leaders, participants, and financial backers of the movement, counting among the founders and lead supporters of organizations such as the NAACP and the National Urban League. On the judicial path towards the advancement of civil rights, Jews played important roles as lawyers and judges. American Jews have often felt a kinship with African Americans based on shared minority status and a cultural memory of slavery, albeit a much more immediate history for African Americans. In the mid-20th century, certain conditions contributed to this sense of identification. The recent history of the Holocaust made many American Jews more attuned to discrimination and racism and more committed to opposing it. In addition, the widespread post-war financial success of American Jews boasted their confidence that the American ideals of equality and meritocracy from which they had benefited could also work for African Americans, not realizing that anti-Black racism made the African American experience significantly different from the Jewish case. For their part, some African Americans who grew strength from biblical stories of slavery and God's redemption and witnessed Jews' active commitment to civil rights also saw Jews as partners in their struggle. So actually, I want to say something here, because that's a part that I kind of struggled with. Well, not struggled with, but this is something that I definitely experienced, and I think for both you, Indy, and I, you live in Jersey. I grew up in New Jersey as a teen, and I went to middle school, and where I went to middle school, as I told you, the town. But it was predominantly Jewish. So here I was, one of the few, in a class of 16, I was like one of 5 Black kids. And especially for me, given that I was an immigrant, so I was extra special. I was the extra token in that class. But even back then, I always kind of wondered, why were my Jewish peers, they lived in great homes, they had, access to things financially that I couldn't afford, they lived in the better towns, they went to the better schools, and here I was living, I call it ghetto light, in the Oranges in New Jersey. So there was me and there was them. So even at school, for me, yeah, I mean, I liked my friends, the ones who were Jewish. I generally liked them, but I think there was always kind of this distance between us, because they lived a life that they didn't necessarily have to live. At the end of the day, after school, I went back to my town, where, I saw drugs, I saw, a lot of hurt and pain and suffering. And a lot of these kids didn't necessarily have to see that, if at all. So there was always this kind of divide for me growing up, in terms of having to kind of be around them, but being around that affluence, and kind of being in the vicinity of, but never having direct access to it, kind of bothered me, in middle school. And I think that kind of grew for me in terms of, going into high school and college, where I was in more mixed white groups, but there was still affluence there, that I could never, it just really bothered me, in terms of that, how there was this, as this article said, a kingship, which I didn't quite learn at the time, but it was like, they liked me, obviously, I was, whatever, but at the end of the day, they didn't live the life that I lived. And so that was where that disconnect for me has always been. And I think in a lot of ways, for many Jewish people, even now today, I think while they might sympathize, I don't think really a lot of them, unless they really are intimately involved in the Black struggle, it's something that I find for some are not really resonate. It doesn't resonate with them in that way. So in a lot of ways, I kind of feel somewhat superficial in terms of that relationship. But yeah, I just wanted to share that, just in terms of how I kind of felt, growing up. And
we were taught on the kindred spirit side, kind of like, look, they're seen as a minority, clearly, as are you. So we stand up for each other against the majority, because that could just as easily be you. Right. Except it couldn't. And that is what I very quickly learned early on, is that there were, first of all, the ability to blend in effectively is what I'm talking about. Right. That and it's pigmentation is literally the difference, and it will cause all kinds of discrimination and feelings. And this is, of course, well documented, but it's a lot harder. A lot of times people have thought that I was Italian, and not that it matters. And what's even more fucked up, and we had this conversation, and shout out to our friend Oz, because Oz comes and hangs out with us quite often. You know, Oz was talking about like Jewish as a nationality or as a race versus a religion. And I said, this is where they fucked us up all, because they've now made it so that Jewish is a race, even though it's really not, because there are Jews from everywhere. There are Jews from everywhere.
Right.
It only
It's a
is when
religion.
it's convenient for them. Like
Right.
Yeah.
But I think it's convenient in terms of benefiting in some regard, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's the idea of Judaism as a race, because simply put, there can be Black Jews, right? So
there are a whole lot of them,
right? So how can that be a race when
our friend Marcus Cage, shout out to Marcus,
which I think he was in the chat earlier. Shout out to you, Marcus. But like, so I never quite understood the idea of, you know, Judaism as a race. And I mean, as you said, you know, like for many of my pretty much all of my Jewish friends, at least growing up, they were white. So they didn't necessarily, unless they told you that they were Jewish, they didn't necessarily have to say that they were Jewish or not. I can't hide my Blackness, you know, unless if I did some stuff to my skin and I look fake as hell. But even then, like, you will know that I'm still Black. So at least for you, you can hide that aspect of your identity if you chose to, especially like if you're in a sense of danger for you. But I can't hide that aspect of my identity given, you know, my skin color. So, but anyway, let's continue with this. At the same time, latent tensions always existed between the two communities. Some Black people viewing the inequality and asymmetry between the experiences of the two groups resented Jewish feelings of moral proprietorship in the civil rights struggle. The geographic closeness of the two groups, who often shared neighborhoods, frequently as a result of the exclusion of Black and Jews from other areas, could lead to tension as well. African Americans' main contact with Jews was often in the form of landlords or shop owners, and some resented Jews for making a profit off their community. When many Jews participating in white flight left inner city neighborhoods for the suburbs and better educational opportunities for their children, their African American neighbors often felt abandoned, blamed for urban problems, and resentful that they did not have the same opportunities to move elsewhere. And this is something
they were also the landlords.
Right. This is something my dad has mentioned to me. You know, he grew up in Barbados. He immigrated to the UK, and he mentioned him and members of the Black community, you know, obviously, you know, like they were rejected from getting apartments from Jewish landlords. They were not able to patron into Jewish establishments, given that they were Black. And, you know, my dad is from a generation, he's Biden's generation. So and I've said a lot of things about my dad. I've said them to you, probably to you two privately, but I understand, like, he has issues with Jewish people. Like, and
he went through segregation, man. Like, you know,
so, but considering what he went through, like, I more than understand it. But more importantly, it's the idea, and this is something I think we'll unpack a little later, but I think the biggest thing that kind of concerns me with Jewish people is the idea of mostly you look to solidarity, not you, but like Jewish people in general look to solidarity with Black people when it comes for social issues. But when it comes to issues as far as economics, especially in terms of having us as Black people be economically viable, that's kind of where I think a lot of that tension is. And the idea, like the stereotype, it's like, oh, Jews are known to make money or whatever. You know, I heard that trope growing up, you know, but I think a lot of it is stemmed from the idea of, because eventually at some point, when Jews were kind of accepted into whiteness, and then I think just as a community, given your faith, you guys were able to band together and become more financially, stable.
Well, I think that the financial end bought our way into respectability and legitimacy with a community that wanted nothing to do with Jews and thinks that our religion is weird, but in a lot of cases, they wanted something from us that they did not necessarily want or need or were going to get financially, that they didn't. Black people didn't have the wealth. That's the bottom line. It's it's wealth versus rich. And we talked about the Chris Rock thing about rich versus wealth. The Jews were able to accumulate generational wealth. They did not have, the average life expectancy in the 30s and 40s like Black Americans did during the Reconstruction era even. Jews fought alongside and fought for the Black community 100%. Also, again, for self-preservation. They saw what was happening.
But again, I think it's the idea of, in terms of self-preservation, like they aligned with us in that regard. But again, not so much with economic issues, especially pertaining to Black people. Personally, I haven't felt that kind of solidarity, and again, not just from Jews, but from everybody across the board. So, but I think that's one of the issues that I have, that I have mentioned to you privately in terms of that. But anyway.
Well, again, Zionists have this Jewish supremacy thing. And again, raised by Zionists, therefore, a lot of the values and things that I hold came from that movement. And some of them are good. A lot of them are not. But
God's chosen people.
Again, let my people go. Look, yes, this is. Can't change how I was raised. I can only undo the programming and acknowledge and try to educate others as to what I've learned. A lot of people are still like with the Matrix. They're not ready to be unplugged, and it really upsets them. It's almost, and I hate to ever compare myself, but shooting the messenger, getting angrier at the person who's delivering the news to you because you don't like what's being said. There's a guy sitting in Belmarsh prison because pretty much he delivered exactly news that was inconvenient to people, that was absolutely true, in fact, an experience that he had learned about, and people want to silence him and keep him locked up because of it. And that guy.
But anyway, let's continue with this article. These tensions sometimes took explicit shape in public anti-Semitic statements among African Americans and anti-Black statements among Jews. Jews often felt particularly betrayed by African American anti-Semitism, arguing that Black people should be more generous given Jewish support of civil rights. Again, heard a lot of that like post October 7th. And that African American leaders should more quickly and roundly condemn expressions of anti-Semitism in their community where such statements were made.
Remember, Palestinians are also Semites. Let's start there. So all this anti-Semitism bullshit is nonsense. Anti-Judaism? No, it's anti-Zionism, okay? Which is a colonial project that is designed to systematically eliminate the Palestinian people. They certainly don't want to live alongside them in peace. They certainly don't want to give them equal rights or an equal government or rights to a military or anything else. They want to establish Jewish supremacy. And that is kind of where we were going in this discussion also, and I think it's even in the article, is that there still is, and look at what's happening in Gaza right now, this aura, this mystique, this whatever you want to call it, where they believe that they are supreme, and there is a pecking order there for sure. And it's why, it's okay, supposedly, quote unquote, that you were able to figure out and how to accept and deal with the fact that there was a two-tiered hierarchy, though there should never have been. That's what society and the whole thing fucked up.
Like, could you imagine, Collin, in New York, group of Jamaicans suddenly had a secret tunnel? You know what the press might do?
Come on.
Right.
Like,
I mean,
right. But again, it kind of goes back to, and I tweeted this out earlier, it's the idea of like, okay, so if an Arab or hell, any person of color did what the IDF did to World City Kitchen, Central Kitchen workers, they would be immediately marked as terrorists.
Mm-hmm.
But
the entire city block would be bombed, like they did in Philadelphia in the 1980s.
Right.
Yeah.
But like
they didn't even do that.
The IDF does it. It's an accident or it's a mistake, and it's just kind of like, okay, all right, that's definitely like a bias there. But anyway, the lane tensions became more prominent within the civil rights movement as it moved north and into the cities in the mid-1960s. In the South, Jews, despite having white privilege, clearly did not have the same powers of the whites. In the North, Jews did not seem as different from other whites and were often the ones who wielded the most power in Black neighborhoods. The National Advisory Commission on Civil Disorders, known as the Kerner Commission, which investigated the cause of the 1967 race riots, found that Jews owned about 30% of the stores in Black neighborhoods like Harlem and Watts, and that many of the larger stores were owned by Jews and or had Jewish-sounding names. Sure, there's going to be screaming anti-Semitism, but
how well did they pay the employees that worked in those neighborhoods? Not very well in the stores that they owned, and then anyway.
So, the mid-1960s also brought a shift within the civil rights movement from a focus on integration and alliance building to one of separatism. In 1966, SNCC and other radical civil rights groups made Black Power the new basis of their activism, calling for racial pride among African Americans and Black self-determination within the civil rights movement. Proponents of Black Power pointed, so this is like the movement where Kwame Ture kind of risen out from this, by the way.
And reparations too. This is where the movement for demanding reparations, I think, came out of.
Right. So like the Black Panthers, obviously think of MLK X, but also like Kwame Ture and the Black Panther movement also came from out of this. Proponents of Black Power pointed out that Black people could not achieve true freedom unless they led the movement themselves. Otherwise, white people retained a degree of power and authority over them. They emphasized the need for Black self-sufficiency as well as Black cultural pride, i.e., Black is beautiful, and encouraged white activists to work on their own issues, in some cases expelling white leaders from their organizations.
Also, looking at Muslim. Oh, okay. You're going to talk Nation Islam. Good.
Yes.
Perfect.
These ideas were not entirely new. Malcolm X, influenced by his conversion to the Nation of Islam, a Black separatist religious sect, had advocated a platform of separatism in the early 1960s. By the late 1960s, however, Black Power had fundamentally changed the structures and substance of the civil rights movement and had inspired new organizations, such as the Black Panther Party, as well as a new wave of Afrocentrism in African American culture, as demonstrated by the use of African names, African clothing styles, Afro hairstyles, etc.
Uhuru.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So let's get into Zionism now. The Six-Day War provided another spur to Black-Jewish tension. After Israel's surprising military triumph in June 1967, many American Jews experienced a surge of pride in Israel, an underdog nation that had succeeded in becoming a power to be reckoned with, and felt a new or renewed commitment to Zionism. Some African Americans also saw the Jewish state as a model for a historically oppressed people empowering themselves. At the same time, many civil rights activists began to develop a more critical approach to Israel, identifying with the Palestinians as an oppressed group seeking self-determination, and castigating Zionism as a colonial racist movement. These tensions around Zionism came to a public head in 1977 when Andrew Young, a civil rights activist and the first African-American ambassador to the United Nations, met secretly with representatives of the Palestine Liberation.
PLO, right? Yasser Arafat's organization.
Right.
Yeah.
This meeting sparked an uproar in which Jews were prominent among those who loudly condemned Young, and which resulted in President Carter asking Young to resign, which he did. Many felt that Jews had forced his resignation.
Richie Torres? Do I hear Richie Torres?
Yes.
Anybody say what? Yeah, like, wait, go back to that for a second. Like, so many things to unpack just in that stuff there. Again, castigating Zionism, castigating it as a colonial racist movement. No, they didn't castigate it as it. That's what it is. All right. So many civil rights. Okay, it should be criticized, and I had never really heard any criticism, honestly, very much growing up. And this surge of pride in Israel, I wanted to talk about this. This was obviously written by a Jewish woman who is likely a Zionist herself, okay, right, who was raised Zionist and has that perspective of Jewish supremacy, because you see this surge of pride. Why was there a surge of pride in Israel? Because the U.S. and Britain backed this artificial nation that not even a nation, but an artificial construct within the Middle East on top of somebody else's land. I mean, so you had pride about that because they did. They fought off several Arab nations, but they didn't do it by themselves.
Right.
They did it with weaponry from the U.S. and Great Britain.
Yeah.
That was not an underdog anything. Those are the two biggest fucking powers in the world at the time, other than Russia. I mean, this whole framing of this again, we've got to be the underdog and the oppressed all the time. All right, this victimhood is constant victimization because it plays into the identity. Okay, right. If we're not victims, well, then what are we? Well, then you're the aggressors that are fucking murdering children. Yeah, that's what you are, and what you've been doing for 75 years while claiming victimhood. In my name, by the way. Fuck you for that.
Yeah. Yeah.
You need to
I've been wanting to do this for a while, so good. I got shit to get off my chest.
We feel you on that.
You are tearing me apart, Lisa.
Educational issue that divided some African Americans and Jews in the 1970s and beyond was affirmative action. Many Jews were wary of affirmative action programs for several reasons. Having benefited from meritocracy, they believed strongly in individual merit as the basis of equality of opportunity. They had negative associations with any program that smacked of quotas, which historically had been used to exclude Jews from schools, clubs, and workplaces, and they perceived that Jews would not benefit from policies that gave preferential treatment to African Americans over whites.
Where'd that solidarity go?
Yep.
Where'd that solidarity go?
The case of Marco de Funes, a white Jewish man, highlighted the Jewish perspective on this issue. In 1971, de Funes was denied admission to the University of Washington Law School. He brought a suit against the school claiming that he had been the target of discrimination because other students with admission scores below the cutoff, as his were, had been admitted while he had not. The original trial found in de Funes' favor, but the Supreme Court of Washington reversed the decision. Because de Funes was Jewish and affirmative action already a heated issue in the Jewish community, the case attracted a great deal of attention from Jewish organizations and the Jewish press, with a range of viewpoints expressing both in favor and opposition to affirmative action policies. In 1974, the case came before the Supreme Court, and organizations such as the ADL supported the original decision. The U.S. Supreme Court ultimately decided that the case was moot because de Funes had been provisionally accepted to the school while the case was pending, was about to graduate.
Okay.
Yeah, God forbid you set a precedent or actually ruled on the thing so that people knew going forward what the prevailing opinion was on how this should be handled. But
old Jesse Jackson. We got Jesse Jackson.
Over the years, other incidents such as Jesse Jackson's off-the-record reference to New York as "we're not saying that word,"
I'll say it. Jaime Town. I'll say it. I don't care. I don't care.
Yeah.
During his 1984 presidential campaign and the riots between blacks and Jews in the heavily Hasidic and West Indian Crown Heights neighborhood of Brooklyn in 1991 had flared tensions between the two communities, provoked in Jews.
Yankel Rosenbaum. It was a black person that murdered a Jewish kid, I believe, that started the tensions in Crown Heights.
Mm-hmm.
In 1991. Sorry, just a little. I remember that clearly, like it was part of the news, and again, not because of part of the Jewish community. That was more like a New York area thing.
New York thing, yeah.
Everybody knew about that.
Provoked in Jews a mixture of anger and nostalgia about perceived golden age of Black-Jewish relations, and made the subject of Black-Jewish relations one of public concern, addressed in mainstream media. Excuse me. Of course, some argued that there never was a real alliance, just a checkered history of connections and collaborations. But for some African Americans and Jews, this history of cooperation led to higher expectations regarding their relationships with one another than with other whites. And then when those expectations were not met, the disappointments on both sides was even sharper.
This is the supremacy thing. I don't know. Did you just put that in there?
No, you already had that. You put that in.
Oh, I did? Okay. I thought I didn't. So, yeah. But so this was the tweet that I mentioned before. The reason why I hate Zionism is because the ideology hijacks any attempts made toward Black liberation. It's interesting that Zionists make the case for themselves to receive debt owed to them for their suffering, but will not for Black people. So this was in reference to me talking about reparations, because as we know, actually go back, Reef.
Oh, yeah.
Our favorite senator in the world, Bernie Sanders,
McCook
was infamous in basically not standing for reparations for Black people. So for those of you who need a reminder,
right, this is one of the prototypical people that walked around screaming, "We have to support the Black community," and then when it came time to actually support the Black community, he disappeared. He was nowhere to be found. He's just like he's waffling on fucking Gaza right now, and we have to hold him to the strictest standards while he votes to send him fucking money for Iron Dome and weapons.
Not a penny more. All right, and action.
Fuck out of here.
I am once again asking for your financial support.
So the question specifically, my Black son, okay, I know you're scared to say Black, I know you're scared to say reparations, because it seems like every time...
Ma'am, I don't think that's a fair
I let you finish as well, but it seems like every time we talk about Black people and us getting something for the systematic oppression and exploitation of our people, we have to include every other person of color. So today, can we please talk about specifically Black people and reparations?
We can talk about what I just indicated, in my view, is that when you have, and you and I may have a disagreement on this, because it's not just Black, it is Latino. There are areas in America, in poor rural areas, where it's whites, okay? So I believe that in a country which has more income and wealth inequality than any other country, that the time is long overdue to start investing in poor countries. We have the highest rate of childhood poverty of any major country on earth.
How about this
especially
country?
within the African American community. So what I've said Black 50 times. All right, that's the 51st time.
Try
all
69.
Right? But it
69 times.
But this is a national issue. All right. So what we want and what I believe we should do, all right, is to invest most heavily in those communities most in need. And when you have 35% of Black children living in poverty.
Please. We did something specifically to the Black community that we did not do to any other community that he wants to equivocate and point shit to. Dude, shut the fuck up and go away.
Yeah.
When you have half of the kids in this country in public schools on free or reduced lunches, When youth unemployment in the African American community is 51%, those are exactly the kinds of communities that you invest in.
Fuck you.
Right. But, and this is partially the reason why I wrote that tweet, because Bernie was not in support of reparations for us when it came time for reparations for Jewish people. You could probably guess where this is going.
Yeah.
So this is from
It's Jewish supremacy again.
Right. So this is from the Africa Diaspora Network. I know Savvy has played this before. I think we probably played this once before too. But again, it bears repeating how when it comes to economic standing, well, Will can watch it and you probably guys know, but you gotta hear it and see it for yourself. So go ahead.
Now, Bernie Sanders isn't for reparations at all for African Americans, but guess who he's okay with having reparations? His own people. See, if you had an issue about reparations, then you would take that no matter what position that you're in, whether it's your own people or someone else. But he was okay with it for his own people. Now let's go ahead and go to the computer real quick, and I want to show you how he was for reparations for his own people. So ladies and gentlemen, you're seeing here the Holocaust Rail Justice Act. Now, this is the reparations that Bernie Sanders was for, because as we know that he says an emphatic no when it comes to African Americans and their hurt and pain, but he says yes to his people. Now, this is the bill that he was pushing for. Now, it says a bill to ensure that the courts of the United States may provide an impartial forum for claims brought by United States citizens and others against any railroad organized as a separate legal entity arising from the deportation of United States citizens and others to Nazi concentration camps on trains owned or operated by such railroad and by the heirs and survivors of such persons. Now, Charles Chuck Schumer, he sponsored that bill, okay? Now, you may say, well, what Bernie Sanders has to do with this one? If we go to details here, co-sponsors, as you will see here, Bernie Sanders. So he co-sponsored this bill, okay? And this is the bill that he wanted, and he wanted reparations for his people. We're going to prove that. So it just say in the summary of this is introduce.
What's that? Wait a minute. Stop. That doesn't seem like reparations. That seems like the ability to sue a rail company that had transported Jews during the Holocaust. Is that reparations?
Yes.
There's no government paying out money for this.
I mean, the people responsible, I would imagine. But here, let's
U.S.
continue.
District Courts over. Go ahead. Let them finish. Yeah.
Grants U.S. District Court's original jurisdiction over any civil action for damages for personal injury or death that arose from deportation of persons to Nazi concentration camps between January 1, 1942 and December 31, 1944, and is bought by or on behalf of such person against a railroad that owned or operated the trains on which the persons were deported, and that was organized as a separate legal entity, declares that no law limiting the jurisdiction of U.S. courts shall preclude any such action, and no such action shall be barred because a statute of limitations has expired. It makes this act applicable to any action pending on or commenced after January 1, 2002. And that says direct Secretary of State to report to Congress on the status of access to wartime records and archives concerning the wartime activities of any such railroad that engaged in the deportation of such persons to Nazi concentration camps. So this particular bill, remember, Bernie Sanders, let's go back to details here. Bernie Sanders was okay with this for his people. But when it comes to us, it's a no. Now, this bill did not get put before the Congress and the Senate. It didn't get to that point. But it was
the federal government didn't pay out any money there. Wasn't going to.
They started putting pressure on France. So what France did in return with this is say, you know what? Okay, we're going to get $60 million and we're going to give it to the U.S. Treasury for the Holocaust survivors. Take a look at this article written November 3rd, 2015. French to pay $60 million in reparations to Holocaust survivors in the U.S. and beyond. Okay? So
because their trains
Bernie Sanders had no problem
SNCF.
with France giving a reparation to his people. Now, they paid the $60 million to the Treasury Department, and they dispersed the money to the Holocaust survivors. Now, Bernie Sanders didn't say anything about that. He co-sponsored that particular bill. But when it comes to you, ladies and gentlemen, what does he say?
Slave owners.
No.
100%.
That's what he says to you.
Sure.
Now, to get a little breakdown of it, we'll go to the New York Post.
Then if those survivors can't pay out, who does that money then get put to? The government would probably have to take over in that sense, I would imagine.
Right.
So... But
and we'll scroll down here.
It's also weird that, like, in 2011, like, again, these are victims of, you're talking about the families who are going to sue the country of France 75 years later for transport.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay.
And as we come.
Yeah, but like you said, imagine if that was descendants of slaves could sue the ancestors of their enslavers for damages owed.
Trillions.
Right.
Yeah.
Like,
I would be fine with that.
Down,
I would 100% be fine with that.
Right here. The money should break down to about $100,000 for each for the survivors and tens of thousands of dollars for spouses. Okay. So that's how that was broke down. So they got 100,000 each spouses. People that wasn't even a survivor, they got tens of thousands. But yet Bernie Sanders says no when it comes to you, but he was okay with taking those payments because he got it. You understand what I'm saying? So Bernie Sanders is extremely foul, extremely. And I'm glad all
yeah, but not for that.
I mean, I don't know, for that too. I'm with him. Like, it's a little shitty to fucking act like you're for something, not be for it.
His family. No, look, his family he literally lost family members in the Holocaust. So he's literally, so he's got a personal connection.
The issue isn't that he did that. The issue is that he won't be there when it's someone else. Like, that's the issue.
That's the issue.
I don't know if something has been presented to him where he would be able to vote on something similar. All right. And again, I'm no defender or no fan of his, but in this case, if it were put in similar terms, would he have said no to that too if it were from our, I don't know. I don't know that. Well, we're going to find out, I guess.
That lady just asked him, like in the last clip, and he fucking word saladed around it.
The difference is define what quote unquote reparations. Does it mean a direct check from the U.S. government to every African American? And how much is that? What does that look like?
Yes,
a direct check from France.
Yes, and
like, yes.
Right. Well, we know his answer to that is no.
Okay.
And why? And why?
Which is one of the reasons of many that he's a fucking dickhead. So
right. Because it's costing the generations of people that didn't necessarily do that, and that I am guessing would be his argument or rationale. I don't know, because I couldn't argue rationally against it.
Well, here's the thing: we were promised. Well, at least in this country, you were like African Americans were promised 40 acres and a mule.
Yeah,
right. Where's that?
And where's that at?
Right.
So this is long overdue for African Americans in this country. And I keep saying this on the show all the time, like, especially to Black people, our beef is not necessarily just with America. Like, again, America didn't become a country until 100 years after they dropped us here. It was the British and all of them that are also responsible too.
I say if any of those squad members want to shake shit up for some reason, try making it to where African descendants of slaves can sue their enslavers. Let's see what happens. See if that puts pressure to get reparations. If it worked for the Jewish folks to get stuff from France, why not?
Right. And Germany.
Right. I'd give it a shot.
Like Germany recognized the original spin in terms of the Holocaust, and I'm not saying immediately, but relatively soon after, they rectified that. So the idea is but here's my issue with this, though. Like, reparations, the idea of Black people receiving reparations is low. We have our work to do regarding that. But the issue that I have is, especially with Jewish people, and again, in terms of the education, like growing up,
not just economics.
Growing up, I learned about the Holocaust up the ass.
Well, we're about to get to that, right?
Right. Night by Elie Wiesel. That's required reading basically now in high schools now. I read that book in middle school. So the idea of the Holocaust, and the idea of having sympathy for Jews in that way, in light of what they were like Diary of Anne Frank, all that,
Jewish trauma.
It's kind of built into, what I was raised in school. But the idea,
Harriet Tubman. Look, we in other ways they tried to make an equivalency that doesn't exist. You cannot possibly equate anywhere close to the two just because of the economic advantages alone.
Right. But it's the idea of, for me, the idea of the Holocaust, which for Jewish people, that's relatively recent history. Like, that has somewhat been rectified. But the idea that...
Yeah, but that wasn't enslavement. That was just extermination. That wasn't like you had to go... It was temporary. You had to go work in a camp or you were going to be killed.
Right, but...
Sorry.
I mean, so you're saying like slavery?
It wouldn't have been temporary if the Russians didn't decide to march their way to Berlin. Well, it
wasn't going to be enslavement, though. It was going to be extermination until there were none left.
But until there's none left, you'll keep them working, I imagine. Anyway, you have this from Jennifer Young, I think, that goes into a bit more of this. I do believe.
So I'm not going to pull all of it because it was a long article. I think there were a couple of things that you in particular wanted to focus on, Indy.
Right.
But in September 1949, the 84-year-old African-American scholar W.E.B. Du Bois, and we talked about him over a year ago, visited the ruins of the Warsaw Ghetto. I've seen something of human upheaval in the world, he wrote, but nothing in my wildest imagination was equal to what I saw in Warsaw in 1949. In 1903, Du Bois famously declared that the problem of the 20th century is a problem of the color line. But after gaining first-hand knowledge of the destruction of Polish Jewry more than 4 decades later, Du Bois readjusted his understanding of race in America. He began to see that slavery and racism were not, as he long thought, a separate and equal phenomenon, but part of a larger problem of perverted teaching and human hate and prejudice. While allowing that racial oppression functioned even beyond the color line, Du Bois was careful not to posit a symmetry between the Jewish and Black experience. Rather, he argued for an understanding of the asymmetricality of history. Each group's experience was historically distinct and neither entirely unique or reducible to a universalized, temporal narrative of common suffering. Du Bois argued that the particular and the universal needed to be held together in suspension. Since Du Bois reconceived the color line's boundaries, he now saw racism and oppression as relational principles rather than fixed social categories. Only by understanding the multidirectional nature of structural injustice could such equality be overcome. So
economic solidarity is much more prevalent and a much better guide to judge whether there is actual kindredness, like kinship there.
Right. But essentially what I determined that in the article what I was saying here is that Du Bois, I think kind of what you were saying before, Indy, like Jewish people kind of associate like your experience in terms of the Holocaust, and then like in the Torah, you know, in terms of, you know, like what you study in temple, like
We were slaves out of Egypt,
like,
and we
right, like one
right.
like one and the same, essentially.
And Moses let us out. Yes.
Right. And it's not. Like, it's very distinct in terms of experience, in terms of history, in terms of culture. So to kind of level the two as, you know, our experiences are ultimately like, and therefore we should have this solidarity with each other, that's kind of where it's a very superficial mindset to have in terms of being in solidarity with each other in that regard. So I think that's what, you know, in this article, what I think Du Bois was saying here.
There also is the, you know, exploitation of the Black community by the Jewish community financially. Again, there always needs to be this hierarchy, it seems.
Right.
In order for you know, like, it can never be that the wealthiest person in the room is the Black person. It's not a racial, it's hard to explain how that always is, but somehow it always ends up that way, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Anyway, just as Du Bois used the Jewish experience to rethink the problem of the color line, American Jews used their encounters with Blacks as a way to understand their own position as a minority, particularly as immigrant Jews began to prosper economically and to experience the benefits that whiteness conferred. In his book, A Right to Sing the Blues, Jeffrey Melnick argued that the concept of Black-Jewish relations does not describe a historical relationship, but rather theoretically functions as a story told by Jews about interracial relations. Although many Jewish American Jews lived in proximity to Blacks, few developed intimate relationships with them. I think that's key there. Rather, they engaged in an internal one-sided conversation about race that helped them to apprehend their relationship to whiteness, to anti-Semitism, and to racial oppression. Eastern European Jewish immigrants worked out their relationship with Blacks in the pages of the Yiddish press, in Yiddish literature, and through philanthropy and political action. Jews on the left in particular championed Black political causes and sought to interpret their simultaneous vulnerability in and culpability for America's racial hierarchy for fiction, journalism, and social activism.
Well, and I will say that the Jewish community recognizes that there has been undervalued and under showcased talent, and it's cultural appropriation in some ways, where they look to the Black community is great at trend setting, and they're incredibly intelligent, and they've had all this to offer, but a lot of people never wanted to hear it. But the Jews were certainly open to it and benefiting from that.
Right. In The Price of Whiteness, Eric Goldstein writes that Jews needed to claim whiteness in order to succeed, but that many Jews' ongoing commitment to a distinctive identity complicated their attempts to claim whiteness. The less different Jews became, the more they claimed difference as a marker of identification with radicalized others, rather than with white privilege. This claim to difference served as an internal identity marker for Jews, particularly as later generations lost the connection to the immigrant class and shed other aspects of linguistic, cultural, and religious identity that distinguished them from their white neighbors. The
Blended and Americanized is what you're talking about.
Yeah. The demographics of the post-war era, upward mobility, suburban settlement, and the concomitant transition from radically diverse urban areas to racially homogeneous neighborhoods meant that Jews and Blacks were even less likely to identify with each other or see themselves as threatened by a common enemy. In the post-Scottsboro era, Jews were more likely to see the mobilization of Black political movements as a threat to Jewish interests, rather than as a response to structural inequality that affected both Jews and Blacks.
Yep. Oh,
See, it's interesting because Jews in this country have always kind of looked over our shoulder at the white Christians who run everything effectively in a lot of ways, or did, and feel like they are this is a Christian nation, and they are the majority of what's. And again, they talked about in the South, and as you move further north, because you have less influence of religion, the further north, the Christianity, the further north you move in this country. I wanted to mention that.
Yep.
Just looking at something. In the age of Black Lives Matter, American Jews still ponder the question of white privilege, but few turn to Du Bois or Schnapps to explicate an understanding of racial oppression as asymmetrical, relational, and historically specific. However, many Jews continue to struggle to understand their own place in a radicalized society and grapple with their own agency to either embrace that world or tear it down. These dynamics continue to play out in an unfinished drama whose next act remains to be written.
It's the battle that I'm literally fighting with my family right now.
What do you mean by that?
Struggling to understand our own place in a radicalized society. Put that back up for a second, because I've figured it out, and I got through an education in the last few years about formation of Israel, about the use of our religion as a bludgeoning tool to control and to divide, use of religion in general about that, but about the lies that were told to the Jewish kids in my generation in order to sell the glorification and this love for Israel. Again, didn't exist when my grandparents were alive.
Right.
So, and this myth about how, well, it's not necessarily even a myth, but how it was gifted to the Jewish people, but they never talk about that anybody lived there or what happened in order to make that happen. It was just, they gave it to us, and it was our homeland to begin with, and we deserved it, and they killed us everywhere else, and we had to have somewhere we can go and live free from oppression. But what happened to the United States, and what happened to the United Kingdom, and what happened to all these other countries where we were able to live free?
There was a part here, I didn't pull it, but I think that was the part that you wanted, that really resonated with you, Indy. I think just in terms of, like, you guys, Jewish people talk about the idea of having a home to escape to. But I argue, especially if you live in the West, now, you're there. Like,
that was never your home. Right.
Right. Your home. Like, I think, again, because you're shielded with whiteness, you can get away with, you can enjoy the benefits of what that offers you in terms of.
I'm shielding myself with whiteness.
With a cracker.
With a saltine.
That's probably not the way to do it, dude. That's probably not the way to do it.
The cracker defense is fine. Don't worry about it. Nah.
But and I know Brianna Jo Gray said this when she had her interview with Dean Phillips, which really resonated with me, is the idea of, like, as a Black person, I'm not safe here. Like, I would argue I'm not safe in really any country in this world. Other than, and it's not like I can go back to just go back to Nigeria and Cameroon, even though ancestral home. And
you ain't Black.
Right of return. Yeah, we talked about that.
I don't have, and I have the DNA testing to prove it, but I'm not given that birthright, quote unquote, to return to those countries. And Liberia doesn't count, for those of you looking in the chat, because I heard that too. We should probably actually report on that at some point, like the issues with Liberia and all. Because that's essentially like a Black version of Israel that, really hasn't gone anywhere, honestly.
I found the quote for that other article. Quote, "The identity of American Jewish liberals and radicals, the presumption of Blacks and Jews compromise a community of the oppressed, that Jews are never acting more true to their religious and ethnic heritage than when they are working side by side with blacks to create a society free of racial and religious prejudice, which I, in theory, agree with very much so. And I said, this is definitely how I was raised, but we were also told that there were also big differences, which we never had to go through. So it's not the same.
No.
The religious discrimination and racial discrimination were, of course, very different.
Right. And I think that's the key, is kind of understanding, look, as I said, and I think we have a clip to kind of end this that Reef pulled, but it's the idea of, actually, let's just play it now, and then we can kind of get into it then. So, so this is from Donahue, like the 80s Donahue.
You remember Donahue?
Oh, wow.
Or, like Oprah became in vogue, but I think this woman kind of summarizes, I think, what I want to say to you in terms of that, though. So go ahead, Reef.
I would just like to say to this gentleman, I would like to say to this gentleman and all other people who are not blessed with melanin at this point in time, to understand that what has happened in our history is that you have been misinformed as much as we have been misinformed. Much of the information that is brought forth, not only from Dr. Muhammad, but other areas, other scholars, are not available to you, as the sister said, in your curriculums that you have for 400 years when you did not allow us to read and write and was being hidden. Whether you, sir, personally did that or not, it was a legacy that was passed on to you. And I end by saying the Holocaust is simply the greatest atrocity on film. Ours was not filmed.
Yeah.
That dude's fucking name still gets me.
Was that Dave
guy right
Chappelle?
there.
It looks like Dave Chappelle.
No, it's
I know it's not.
No.
Bishop Tutu? No, that's not Desmond Tutu.
No. But
that's a lot of Doge. Yeah.
No, but that I think for me is key, because your history, Indy, has been
Documented
commoditized
much more.
Yeah, way much more. You know, we are able to, well, probably not so much now given this day and age, but at least, you know, the Holocaust is talked about on the regular in school. Pretty much every school you can think of.
No,
the
that
Holocaust
was
is in some way, shape, or form
Dr. Abdul
talked about.
Khalid Muhammad on Donahue. And I think that's Phyllis Yvonne Stickney was the lady in that, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So just FYI for people who want to look that up. I'd like to see that whole episode. I'm sure it's interesting.
Yeah.
So
you probably maybe if we kind of try and do a rumble on that. But anyway, but yeah, I think that's the point, is that your history is, for the most part, accepted and talked about and dissected, and even now, like in terms of what's happening in Gaza, the idea is like, we suffered from the Holocaust and we don't want that to happen to us ever again. So this is why we have a right to defend ourselves and all that kind of stuff. When Black people talk about that in terms of slavery, usually the answer is shut the fuck up. You're not slaves anymore. Rise above it. Things are a lot better for you now. Kiss off.
Hillary Clinton, get over it.
Right,
Hillary Clinton saying, get over it.
Right.
Yeah.
Like it's only probably it's only probably within recent years that the idea of slavery, I think, we're just beginning to have more of a conversation seriously about it. And I would argue recently, you know. But again, as I said, growing up in school, like I learned the Holocaust up the ass. Like,
we didn't learn about Tulsa. We didn't learn about Wilmington. We didn't learn about all kinds of Juneteenth. We never learned Juneteenth.
Right. I only knew of Juneteenth since 2016.
Honestly,
but then obviously it became a holiday.
Emmett Till through Dave Chappelle. That's who I learned about Emmett Till from, which that should not be the case.
So for us, our history is either hidden because and I will call Black people out on this too. We do not do a good job collectively compared to Jewish people in knowing our history collectively. So that I kind of fault on us in some regard. That being said, a lot of that history has been purposely being erased, in terms of curriculum, in terms of culture, that there's a lot that really the powers that be do not want us to know, because God forbid that we actually do know it and stand up against it. But that's another topic for another day.
Yeah.
But as
Anything to
she
close
said,
with? By the way,
yeah, no, I think for me, like, that's key in terms of we really need to have conversations like these among each other. But I think, and I'm just saying this as a Black person talking to you as Indie, and I think you've done, I think obviously being a part of INN, like, I think we've naturally kind of had these conversations anyway. So I really, again, appreciate you again to have that safety and able to kind of share a lot of this stuff with you. But I think ultimately that's kind of what I want to see, not just in the independent media space, but I think just across the board, that Black people should have to be able to really have that fortitude, but also feel comfortable in talking to our Jewish brothers and sisters who really, really want to know, to kind of give in the real in terms of, look, we understand, we get all this solidarity in terms of what we experience in terms of the suffering that both of us called, but at the same time, it's not the oppressed Olympics too. Like, and I feel a lot of ways it's kind of played out as such, but our experiences are totally different. And the thing is, especially if you're white and Jewish, you're able to benefit, you're shielded from a lot of the stuff that makes you an other in this country, that doesn't give you that same perspective as I have living in this country. And especially for me as an immigrant,
Straight up discrimination over skin color too. I mean,
right. So I think we definitely need to have more conversations where we do not look at our experiences as romanticized, as all walking hand in hand in the civil rights movement, but kind of get to the tension as to why there are some issues, even among Blacks and Jews, that we still have, that I think we kind of know, but we don't talk about openly. And I think if we really want to have true solidarity, then we should feel comfortable enough, especially since we generally understand oppression, that we should be able to have those conversations with each other and not have either side feel offended. But if we're really looking to have that true liberation that both communities speak of, we need to have conversations as to what that will look like. And I think especially for Black people, that we really need your support, or at least we would like to really have you be fervent in that solidarity of sharing the stuff that is unique to us, to elevate that.
And have the conversation. Jews love to talk. I'll tell you that for sure.
Okay.
We will talk and listen. We will listen. I mean, some won't listen. You might not like what they have to say also, but the conversation is what's important. The dialogue and the coming together to discuss these things, to identify, where can we come together? Where can we work together and find common ground? And how can we help with the education aspect? Because the Jewish community has been, of course, heavily focused on education for children and for years. And if I'd love to see more equality and equity when it came to that, education, especially early childhood education. And that is specifically an economic issue.
Right.
When it comes to nursery school and pre-K, and the ability to afford it, the ability to have a parent at home, because you don't have two working parents that have to be working. There's all kinds of financial issues that arise early on from childhood and from infancy, almost,
right.
Neonatal care, even, to postnatal care. And there is so much that we can still do to understand each other, to work together, and to make things more equitable and more even.
As a quick
because there
aside,
still is a financial supremacy that is an unfair disadvantage because of ADOS, effectively, in a lot of ways.
As a quick aside, like what I'm going to be testifying on tomorrow night is, and our budget for DC locally was released, and basically it's a shitstorm of fuckery. Basically, like it's basically like cuts here, cuts there, cuts everywhere. But more particularly, one of the big issues was there is funding essentially for early childhood educators, and I feel for early childhood educators, especially if you work in like nonprofits or like any daycare, because they get no money. They get pennies traditionally, because many of these workers are women, older women usually, of color, and usually immigrant, especially in low income areas, and they do not get, really, if they're lucky to get a living wage, you know, that's lucky for them. And the funding that helps to support their salaries, you know, in DC is essentially being cut. So I had a testimony, you know, I've talked about like advocating for a child tax credit in DC. I had to change my testimony today to kind of mention this funding that's being cut. And one of my council members said it best, you know, like I guess when they were kind of talking through it in preparation for the 500 people who is coming to testify tomorrow all day, that, you know, when it comes to kids, given the budget, basically it's like, fuck them kids. And the idea is that you either get them in school to actually do something with them, or you get them in the street. Take your pick. So I'd rather try and get them in school where we actually have a chance to do something with them versus getting them in the street, or worse yet, getting them like in the grave. But I think it kind of speaks to that, what you were saying, Indy, in terms of the education needs to be there, the willingness to kind of have these, even though they might be uncomfortable, also has to be there. But we also have to talk about what true solidarity is in terms of what does that actually mean. It's not necessarily being like, oh, we're one and the same and blah, blah, and kumbaya. It's like, no, what are the differences? How can we challenge each other in terms of these differences? And what can we really do in terms of really working that solidarity
for each other?
For each other based on that mutual understanding. We don't have to agree, but we have to have that mutual understanding that our histories are different, our experiences are different, but that's okay, because as long as we're able to kind of have that understanding, you know, then we're better able to support each other in that way, rather than a superficial stance of through religion or like culture or just living, just happen to be side by side among. And I wish there actually, and in just doing research for this, most of the articles I found were like that. It was just the romanticizing of that relationship between Jews and Black people in this country. And I think we need to actually have serious conversations of what makes us different and unique, and being able to kind of work through that together.
And the hard work of Black people certainly made a lot of Jewish people rich and wealthy in this country. Let's straight up acknowledge that.
Right.
I don't know if I actually did, but
yeah. All right.
I know you've got one more story you want to get to.
Yeah, but before
I got to use
that,
so
you know, so long cycle, but I think it's definitely worthwhile. And shout out to Savvy and JB if they do talk about this issue, because I know they plan to talk about this issue as well. Please engage them in the chat respectfully, please. And like anything that you might have heard tonight that resonates, definitely share with them. You know, but I think, you know, in the independent media space, we definitely need to have more of these conversations. So with that being said, if you want us, and then especially on INN, to continue having conversations like this, you know, feel free to help us via donation. As we've thankfully put up, you can see our QR code, so you're able to scan. And as we said, all of your proceeds will go towards Jesse's new computer. Please help us in helping us, you know, just getting up to 2K. hopefully by the summer, I guess.
Yep.
You know, and then be sure to like and subscribe, as we are heavily suppressed. Be sure to make a comment. We definitely read them all, and we really do appreciate your love and support in the comments. And yeah, thank you guys, and thank you, Indy, for being willing to have this conversation with me.
Yep, and I'm going to...
Thanks to Anna Mayers, $20 over on Cash App. Thank you.
Hey.
Into the Jesse Fund. Thank you. Actually, it's better that it goes to Cash App than Rockfin. Rockfin takes 30%, and I have to exchange the rate tokens into USDT, and it's a pain in the ass to get Rockfin money. Yeah. If you can give on Cash App's the best because there's literally no fees, and it goes right into my bank.
And I think Kofi's also...
And I make sure that goes to the...
Kofi's also very useful.
Kofi goes to...
Just Us.
Yeah, it goes to the PayPal account that Reef set up for INN. So there is a PayPal account for INN, paypal.com/ if you look it up, paypal.com/PayPalMe/Indie News Network. I know it's
or you can just do it through Kofi, which doesn't take anything.
Or just do it through Kofi. Right.
Yeah.
You have to have an account there, though, which people don't want to set up an account at Kofi and connect their stuff to it.
You'll be all right. Jesus.
I appreciate if you do. It's really not a big deal. It's free, and it really helps out independents, and they don't make any fees. So please support Kofi for sure.
Lisa AOC.
Also, wait, $2 Rockfin.
Yes. That's what I can run the show, Indy. We're good. I got it.
Hey.
I do this every week. We're doing great.
Good.
Received a tip. Lisa AOC. Yeah, go pee. Go do something. Let's check Rumbles. Google, have you ever spent summer in the South? You'd be praying for the world to end too. I've spent my entire life here. I'm just saying. You know, I feel you. You know.
I mean,
it's up there.
I visited Tallahassee many years ago for a wedding in the summer, and I died.
Yeah, it's bad, huh? It's the
Not
fucking
so much
humidity, son.
The humidity.
I know.
Killed.
I know. It kills you in the cold too. You're like, why does 60 feel like below zero? I don't understand. You know, it's dumb. And then the bugs. Don't get me started on those. They're bad too. But yeah, just terrible. Let's look at chats. Somebody rescue Reef from Tron. Do I want to be rescued from Tron? I mean, if I'm winning all my disc games, I should be okay. You know? But yeah. Anyway. Well, we're about ready for our last story, I think.
Yeah. So back to Israel.
Yeah.
Actually, it's been all Israel tonight in different ways, but
yeah.
But yeah, more to the fuck shit that is Israel now.
Well, let's get started. So, war with Iran. You're wondering what that might mean and why I have an Israeli flag coming for the Iranian flag. Well, bad stuff happened this week. So, as it seems to be doing every week. So, 7 people, including Iranian diplomats and an Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps senior commander, were killed in Israel's airstrike Monday on Tehran's consulate in Damascus. So, led by Brett Wilkins, second time tonight. We've had him, and Consortium's picking him up and pushing him out there. So, as well as SheerPost, I do believe, is doing the same. So I do believe he's an Indie Media Award honoree, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, he is.
So, you know, I'm sure Indy will remind me. This guy, I do believe, is also, but never in history has a state bombed another state's embassy and in a third country. In the last 12 weeks, Israel and the U.S. have attacked Iran, Russia, China, Syria, and Yemen. This is already a world war in all but name. So we'll let Richie explain what he means. If I do this and this.
The United States and Israel have declared war on Russia, China, and Iran, with Israel's attack on the Iranian embassy in the Syrian capital Damascus marking the most egregious and outrageous escalation in what is a world war in everything but name. It's no coincidence that attacks have taken place in Russia, Iran, China, Syria, and Yemen all at the same time. All these attacks are related to the war in Gaza and happened within a period of 12 weeks, with the same groups, Al-Qaeda and ISIS, claiming responsibility. What a surprise. What do both these groups have in common? It's their links to the United States and Israel. And isn't it funny that Al-Qaeda and ISIS never mention the war in Gaza? Where is their support for the resistance of their Muslim brothers against Israel and America? You know, at the start of this war, it was only Hamas. The next day, Hezbollah entered. Then it was Iraq, Yemen, and Syria. Now, it's no longer a regional war, but a global one. It is a world war in all but name. Have Russia, China, and Iran been attacked over their support for the resistance? In Russia, it seems the US are very unhappy that Putin was re-elected, or that in February, delegations of all the Palestinian factions, including Hamas and Fatah, were hosted in Moscow. And they're especially not happy that Putin crushed NATO in Ukraine, solidifying his victory with a new assault that the Western media don't seem to cover, or that the sanctions imposed by the West utterly backfired. The head of Russia's FSB said that US, UK, and Ukraine were behind the recent Consulate attack, and a new attack was foiled only days later. You know, if the US blew up the Nord Stream pipelines, and they did, and they attacked the Kremlin with drones, which they did, then what's to stop them from doing something like this? Putin is probably furious, and he should be, and I've no doubt his ire will exact revenge in good time. Next door in China, it's no secret the US have been waging an economic war for years out of jealousy over Beijing's technical and economic prowess. The US economic model has become obsolete. Many countries flock to join China's New Silk Road, BRICS, and the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. The US have tried to attack and undermine China using Hong Kong, Taiwan, Tibet, and AUKUS in the South China Sea. But what really has the Americans and Israelis angry is that Russia and China made a recent deal with the Houthis that guarantees the safety of their commercial ships, a large percentage of which pass through the Bab el-Mandeb Strait and the Red Sea. In exchange, Russia and China shall afford Yemen political protection at the United Nations Security Council. I mean, that's a deal. It's no surprise that the bomber behind the terrorist attack in China came from Pakistan, where the United States created Al-Qaeda. The US have always maintained a presence in the region to be close to Russia, China, and Iran. This is something that Prime Minister Imran Khan criticized, and then all of a sudden, he was removed as Prime Minister and thrown in prison. Israel's bombing of the Iranian embassy in Damascus has left at least 5 people dead and killed strategic partners in Syria's war on Al-Qaeda and ISIS. In addition, we had the January attack, which was the deadliest since the revolution, and on the anniversary of General Soleimani's assassination, who was killed by the Americans at Israel's behest. Iran refuses to recognize Israel, and the US have been trying to breach it ever since their puppet, the Shah, was deposed. Iran is the biggest, most vocal supporter of the resistance and has helped Hezbollah, Hamas, Yemen, and Syria to acquire sophisticated weapon systems and defend themselves. The same day of the terrorist attack, Israel assassinated the head of Hamas political bureau, Saleh Haruri, in Beirut, which further proves that Israel has a hand in all these attacks. As of late, Israel has been busy bombing deeper and deeper inside Lebanon and causing larger casualties to try and provoke Hezbollah into using their larger weapons so they reveal their hand. One overlooked aspect of the war are the Israeli attacks on Syria. And just now, one of the most lethal when Syria was bombed by Israel and attacked by Al-Qaeda simultaneously, resulting in the deaths of 40 Syrians. Not only was the timing suspicious, but we know for a fact that Israel have worked together with Al-Qaeda to try and overthrow the secular government of Syria.
You're happy to treat Al-Qaeda fighters, but not Hezbollah fighters?
We have a different account with Hezbollah. Al-Qaeda, to the best of my recollection, has up to now not attacked Israel.
But it's attacked your number one ally and protector and sponsor, the United States of America. There is a quote-unquote war on terror being going on for 15 years.
While the UK and US are bombing Yemen, it now turns out the Americans are building a secret airstrip on the Yemeni island of Socotra. Yemen's blockade has been very successful, striking 86 ships and now extending all the way to the Indian Ocean. Out of the blue, now Al-Qaeda have resurfaced, reactivated in the rear, fighting with other factions and announcing a new leader. What a coincidence. This is naught but an attempt by the Americans and Israelis to open another front on the Yemenis because they successfully blocked their ships. ISIS and Al-Qaeda are the mobile armies of the Americans and Israelis. When they're disgruntled or unhappy, they set their dogs loose to carry out terrorist attacks, create instability, and undermine the security of other nations, particularly those they've been unable to breach or control, like Syria, Russia, or Iran. Because they're unable to win using conventional methods, they use proxies and terrorist groups to assault these governments and to try and loosen their grip on power. The terrorist attacks in Russia, China, and Iran are unprecedented, and they mark an escalation in the confrontation between the West and global South.
Any questions? No.
Goddamn.
Yep.
Good.
Yep, he kind of is. There's a lot of stuff I didn't know in there, but very good. So, to continue with Brett Wilkins' article, Iranian and Syrian officials on Monday accused Israel of bombing Iran's consulate in Damascus. I love how it's accused. You know, they did. An attack one expert called a war-abetting escalation that U.S. President Joe Biden claimed he was preventing in the Middle East.
You gonna go back to the article?
What? Yeah. That was
the article.
There you go. 7 people, including Iranian diplomats and Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Senior Commander General Mohammad Reza Zahidi, was killed in the airstrike, which, according to the BBC, occurred at approximately 5 p.m. local time and flattened the multi-story building adjacent to the Iranian embassy in the Syrian capital Meza district. Iranian Foreign Minister Hussein Amir Abdullahian described the strike as a violation of all international obligations and conventions. Faisal Mekdad, his Syrian counterpart, condemned what he called a heinous terrorist attack. Israeli officials declined to comment on the attack. Israel has increased airstrikes targeting IRGC and Hezbollah militants inside Syria since the Hamas-led October 7th attacks. What? Allegedly.
Israeli officials declined to comment on the attack?
Yes.
Comment on everything, and yet they have nothing to say about this?
No. Israeli strikes against Hezbollah have also killed hundreds of militants and civilians in Lebanon. In case you were wondering. Hamdira Azizi, a visiting fellow at the German Institute for International and Security Affairs, called the consulate attack a significant escalation in tensions. The attack is viewed by some in Iran as a declaration of war by Israel against Iran. Azizi wrote on social media, it represents a shift from previous engagements directly hitting Iranian soil, represented by its consulate in Syria, as opposed to targeting IRGC's officers in Syrian sites. In earlier stages, Israel would refrain from targeting IRGC officers, only proxies and arms shipments, he continued. Since the Gaza war, a shift was already there to target high-ranking Iranian commanders. Some sources claim the attack was a response to an assault on an Israeli ship last night at the port of Eilat, attributed to Iraq militias. Yes, this Eilat, gotcha. This suggests another new rule of engagement by Israel, direct retaliation against Iran for any attacks by its proxies. Azizi
Eilat is a port city that has been devastated. Eilat is a port city that has been devastated by the Yemeni attacks. Literally, like 80% of their commerce was coming from travel through the Indian Ocean, and that's been cut off. So they're dying. So go ahead.
Azizi added that the strike is also seen as a message to both Iran, al-Assad's regime in Syria, Israel's capability and willingness to escalate its response to the presence of Iranian forces in Syria. Numerous experts, including Azizi, wondered whether Israel informed the United States ahead of the attack. A White House spokesperson said that Biden is aware of reports attributing the strike to Israel and that his team is looking into it. Shrita Parsi at the Quincy Institute for Responsible Statecraft said on social media that this is the exact type of conduct that usually prompts the U.S. to label a country a pariah or rogue state. So
That's Israel said that.
Yeah, exactly.
No, Iran. He's talking about, well, yes, but Iran is what's going to happen. They'll turn around and label Iran that way.
Yep. So Max Blumenthal, the U.S. UN delegation, just issued a full-throated defense of Israel's brazen attack on Iran's sovereign diplomatic facility, accusing Iran of harboring terrorists in its consulate in Damascus. This was also a defense of the shredding of the UN Charter. In the post-World War II international order, the U.S. rep added an unbelievably ironic call for Iran to exercise restraint. So here it is. We'll watch this. Let's full screen and action.
Pentagon's assessment that this was an Israeli strike. Have you all been in touch with the Israelis about this?
We were not notified before the strike occurred. We have been engaged with them at different levels, but again, this was not a U.S. military strike, so I don't have a lot of the details on it.
But you have been engaging with them after the fact to discuss specifically their attack on this building in Damascus.
We have engaged with them on various different levels, not to mention some of the questions about the humanitarian aid workers that were also killed in the strike in Gaza. Tom.
Thank you. Does the U.S. plan on...
Any questions?
She's terrible. Like, again, well, intersectional imperialism, folks. All right? Because now if you criticize her, you're criticizing her nationality.
Yep.
And she looks like she's from that region potentially. So that makes it a lot more difficult to potential. I mean, I don't give a shit. She's defending monstrosity. Just like, Caitlin Johnstone, I listened to her thing this morning or yesterday. She referred to spokesman Matt Miller. She called him Count Smugula, which is just perfect.
Very good.
Between him and the heavyset dude, the Latino dude, and the John Kirby, like these people, God bless them, for standing up there and saying the worst shit with a straight face, as if they're just like it's just what they have to do today. And it's like, Jesus Christ, man.
They get paid to do that, so.
Yeah, I know they get paid to do that, but they still have to live with themselves for the rest of their lives afterwards. Like, come on. There's only so much money. Like, money can only do so much when it comes to living with yourself, for championing and for whitewashing the extermination of children.
Mm-hmm. Well, the U.S. accuses such states of seeking to destroy the rules-based order, Parsi noted, but so far Biden has acquiesced to Israel's conduct in the area, as well as all other aspects of Israel's slaughter in Gaza. Parsi accused Israel of seeking
rules-based order, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
Rules-based order is another way of saying U.S. and UK supremacy.
Yes.
It was getting away from the multipolar world. Right? Mm-hmm. Rules-based order, well, who sets the rules?
Yep. Parsi accused Israel of
just reading that.
Seeking to either destroy these norms or create a new normal in which it, much like the US, will be untouchable above these laws and norms. He's also called the Damascus strike the kind of war-abetting escalation Biden claimed he was preventing. The US has also bombed Syria, as well as Yemen, Iraq, and Somalia since October 7th. And here's Fee to remind us that this is huge. Israel will not be able to keep terrorizing everyone without consequences. You want to see some of those consequences? At Uphold Reality, China blasts Israel at the UN. This is a grave violation of the UN Charter, right? So to allow impunity for such reckless acts would send a serious wrong signal and would encourage even more risky acts. The red lines of international law and the basic norms of international relations has been breached time and time again. So here's China, you know, they're here at the UN.
China.
They're gonna tell us.
Madam President, yesterday the Iranian diplomatic premises in Damascus, Syria, were hit by an airstrike, causing the death of 7 Iranian personnel and severe damage to the premises. This is a grave violation of the UN Charter and international law, and a breach of the sovereignty of both Syria and Iran. This attack is of an extremely vicious nature. China strongly condemns this attack. 25 years ago, China's embassy in Yugoslavia was bombed by a US-led NATO airstrike, resulting in personnel casualties and damage to the embassy. We feel the grief and pain of the Iranian government and people, and express our deepest sympathy and condolences to the Iranian government and people. In accordance with the Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations and the universally recognized basic norms governing international relations, the safety and security of diplomatic missions is inviolable. To allow impunity for such reckless acts that lack any baseline would send a seriously wrong signal and would encourage even more risky acts. We take note of the solemn protests and condemnations against Israel raised by Iran, Syria, and other Arab countries. We hope that Israel will respond to them. Madam President, since the Gaza conflict broke out in October last year, we have witnessed attacks on homes, attacks on schools, attacks on hospitals, attacks on humanitarian facilities, attacks on UN agencies, and today, attacks on diplomatic premises. The red line of international law and the basic norms of international relations has been breached time and again, and the moral bottom line of human conscience has been crushed time and again. Such a situation, such a tragedy must stop immediately. Last week, the Council adopted Resolution 2728, calling for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza. We strongly call on the international community to work together to ensure that this resolution is implemented so that the Muslim community will not have to celebrate the month of Ramadan in the midst of gunfire. At present, the ground situation in Gaza is deteriorating with rising spillover risks, and the situation in the Middle East has become ever more precarious. Israel's frequent cross-border strikes against targets in Syria and Lebanon are a serious violation of the sovereignty, independence, and territorial integrity of the countries concerned, and have aggravated tensions throughout the region. Such provocative actions might trigger greater turmoil and jeopardize the security of the entire region. Such actions must stop immediately. China calls on all parties, especially countries with important influence on Israel, to play a constructive role and to make concrete efforts to bring about an immediate ceasefire in Gaza and to ease tensions and restore peace and stability in the Middle East at an early date. Thank you, President.
Wait a minute. Doesn't China have some influence over Israel too?
China.
Just asking.
I mean, it's probably got a few. I mean, it's saying that it was putting pressure, so, you know. So, but anyway.
What that really is that's yelling at the U.S. and the U.K. effectively, because they're the ones who have been standing in the way, blocking it, sending arms, sending troops, sending support to Israel, and not stopping Israel from blocking the humanitarian aid that was coming in from UNRWA, accepting the premise and the contention that anyone in UNRWA was a terrorist or was a member of an active member of Hamas working against Israel. I mean, everybody's just sitting there wringing their hands and talking while Israel's murdering people.
Yeah.
And I think this is what Israel knows.
Yeah, I mean, they can afford to get away with it because they know they can. Because
no one
is stop them.
Doing any, like the UN hasn't.
The only one that's going to stop them are us, who's funding them and funding them and arming them. It's either us or somebody has to then fight us and them to try to put a stop to it.
Yep.
To fight the Israeli army, to fight the IDF in Gaza in defense of. And where is? And look, this is the one argument I get from the Zionists. Where is every other Arab country in the world? Why are they not going near Gaza, or at least trying to mount some type of a defense on behalf of this
Yemen
Muslim population?
And what's happening with them? They're getting attacked by Israel.
But not in Gaza. But there's 27 countries that have armies and militaries, Reef.
You want them to walk into
this is
Israel?
One of the things that the Zionists...
I mean, sure.
That's what the Zionists effectively are. They're almost asking for... But no, they do it in reverse, because they say, well, why won't those countries take the Palestinians in, even though they all did and have?
That's the problem.
But they also don't want to... don't want to acknowledge Israel to accept them, because then it's acknowledging Israel and that they stole the land and that everybody's okay with that now, which they're not and never have been.
They're willing to bomb Iranian soil because they might house some Palestinian, like already. So what happens if you push them into Egypt? They're just going to go into Egypt and go, well, you've got, black
but
sun
also
terrorists and
But also remember the BB map that he put out where he called parts of Syria and Lebanon were the original the original borders is what he's telling. He wants it all, and he's going after and targeting those two specific countries because he wants to destabilize them, and that's where I think he's, at least for Israel's perspective. They're going to let the U.S. fight the Yemen thing because it's also affecting international trade and it's fucking with our money. And to us, that's the golden goose. You don't fuck with the golden goose.
Well,
it's why Britain is flipping out and sending support too. Go ahead.
Well, Palestinian Policy Network fellow Tarek Kinney Shawa said that what the Biden administration means by taking every measure to avoid regional escalation is that they're making sure only Israel is allowed to escalate, deploying aircraft carriers, airstrikes in Yemen, Syria, and Iraq. All of that is to make sure Israel can provoke, but no one can respond. While Parsi wondered if Israel attacked Iran's consulate, its sovereign territory, to elicit a response to justify a larger war, antiwar.com editor Dave DeCamp went further, accusing Israel of trying to provoke a war with Iran to get the U.S. directly involved. Friend of the show.
Well, yeah, it makes sense because, I mean, Israel is nothing without our money and our weapons. So, yeah.
Which is exactly what we were saying.
Benefit because, that's money for us. So, yeah.
Yep. Iranian journalist Mona Hojat Ansari wrote for the Tehran Times that the far-right government of Prime Minister Netanyahu believes that by plunging the region into a maelstrom of chaos and entangling, the United States is in another pointless war in West Asia that would drain American resources. It may find a chance to survive as an apartheid establishment. The attack on Iran's consulate should particularly raise a red flag for Washington, she added, as it demonstrates Israel's readiness to ignite the entire region, even if that means that the U.S. and all its traditional allies in the region would suffer devastating consequences. So, any questions? I mean,
so World War III, anyone?
Pretty much.
We're fucked.
Damn straight.
Yes.
So, yeah,
We're fucked.
Yep. I can't even. You know, like there's so much involved with this bullshit. So
we're encouraging all of this. We're funding it. We're actively stoking it. We've done it. How much of this is because of military contractors pushing all of this also from behind the scenes, just like they did in Ukraine?
Oh God, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So,
like, you know, I mean, we've said it on the show many times, and I'm sure you've mentioned this on How Do We Miss That? Like, if Hillary was president, like, we've been wrapping up in wars by now. You know, like, and probably still a lot of them will probably still be.
Oh, it would have been here faster. All of that would have been here
that's
sooner.
the idea with Ukraine. It would
They'd have done
happened-
Ukraine.
They would
They'd have done Ukraine in 2017.
Yeah.
Like Trump fucked up their
100%.
plans, so now like Biden.
Well,
is
and
just
Trump with the
following up.
Abraham Accords fucked up their plans too, to a point. They want there to be conflict, you know, to a point. Like, it's nice when everyone kind of gets along. That's not where the military contractors and everybody else, you know, keeps everybody employed. And that fear mongering is what keeps everybody in line. You remove that fear, they stop spending the kind of money on defense and on the bases and on the weaponry and everything else that they're spending it on, the salaries, the jobs program that it effectively is.
Yeah.
But we don't have enough money for our early childhood education and to fund the educators, the teachers themselves. There's about to be a huge crisis in this country because of all of the subsidies and stuff that has been going to early childhood education. That's drying up.
It's cut.
Yep. And
again,
that's
that's what I just talked about in the last segment. That's what my mayor is cutting. So that's why I'm going to be doing a testimony on. And again, I wasn't planning to do it, but in light of that, I had to switch up my testimony during the day, when I was working with kids, like to give it tomorrow. But I think it's just the idea of like, and I said this earlier today, you know, like we're eagerly giving money to defense, you know, /war/police easily. But we're not able to figure out healthcare. We're not able to figure out education. We're not able to figure out infrastructure. Like our country is fucking falling apart. But we're somehow able to find money in our coffers for war.
East Palestine. How about like literally East Palestine? The shit, fucking the Dolly and Baltimore and the fucking the Key Bridge. I mean, infrastructure is falling apart. Yes, and again, Israel needs theirs. So because of this, why are we funding this?
Why? Oh, not aliens. It's not alien shit.
No. Why? I was waiting for the Joe Biden why.
That's not. First of all, that is not Joe Biden, sir. That is like Creflo
How do I always
Dollar
think that it was?
Or some shit because of like just Southern pastor.
Why?
Oh.
Why?
Okay.
Why?
Yeah, it sounds like that definitely sounds like creepy sleepy handsy Uncle Joe, right? Am I not wrong? Am I not wrong? Thank you. Okay.
Yeah.
I've always thought that was Joe Biden.
It's someone like
I
that.
had no
I'll
idea.
look up exactly who it is, but it's not Biden.
Okay.
There's video
it's not
of it.
$1.
No, but it's someone in the same, like some televangelist, you know?
Okay.
So, but yeah. Anyway.
I think I know. I think I know who it is.
Yeah,
I'll look it up. I think I know who it is. Like this just shows.
Speaking of televangelizing,
we're all.
If you need the prosperity, you must give us more prosperity, so that we must prosper unto you. Amen.
No.
Amen.
Oh my God.
You
You should
go to
let Collin at least do that. Come on, man.
/Indie News Network or scan the QR.
I was just wrong on
your
so many
screen
levels.
I don't have that cadence.
to proselytize. To stop the devil, you must
somebody
give
grew
us
up in
your
black
cash.
churches.
I definitely grew up around them.
I didn't really grow up in black.
Did you go to Baptist church? Did you go to Baptist church?
Me?
Like
once or twice.
Briefly, very brief.
Well, they never asked you to like and subscribe. That would be a little weird, you know, if they asked you to like and subscribe or to share and comment. You know,
that's the stuff we never hear about as Jews. Like,
please, can the congregation help us get 2K subscribers? We are at 1.8, about to be at 1.9. Please, if you would be so generous, put that subscription in the collection plate. Amen.
In the Jello pudding pop. It sounds that sounded more that did go into Bill Cosby there for a second.
Now, Rudy. Now look, me and my wife Camille and our 5 children. Anyway,
so
sorry, I grew up on that fucking dude.
I just dropped a link in the chat. Been working on a new website and it's soft launch.
Indie New Snow.
Everyone here wants to look at it.
Is that IndieNewSnow.com?
Indie New Snow, yes. Indie, yeah. Oh God, that's terrible. IndieNewsNow.com
or IndieNewSnow.com.
Well, you'd be very disappointed.
Call 555-331-6969.
Well, if you're really expecting snow, you're going to be disappointed. That's really funny. Apparently, and I looked it up, there was another older show that was called, or another network or whatever that was called Indie News Now, but they haven't tweeted or done anything since like 2018. And they used to do some stuff like a decade ago, but it's been dormant for a while. The domain was available. I grabbed it and I set up this aggregator website. It's all independent media. It's all pulling from the sites that we like to pull from. And it's pulling new articles every hour and updating the site automatically. So I'm pretty excited about it.
I had to go to, where's that?
IndieNewsNow.com.
Indie New Snow.
Indie News Snow.
IndieNewsNow.com.
There it is. We have the ability to like do this and then show people. Look at that.
Yeah, and then of course under my nameplate there was hey, how about that? Oh wow, shit, it's at the top. Get out.
Yeah.
Look at that. Oh, because I did. You know why? Because I published a Substack about it, and it pulls in from INN Substack as one of the things it does.
Gotcha.
If you scroll down a little bit, there's actually a watch live, and I embedded INN's restream. So if we're ever live, you can watch us live right there on IndieNewsNow.com. How about that? We have a website where we are streaming live, completely unfiltered, completely without any
Substack newsletter near you.
I mean,
really
this is literally the future right here, especially if YouTube such a.
Right now, keep scrolling down to the bottom, all the way to the bottom, and there's actually I embedded INN's YouTube channel. Keep going.
Why? Sure.
Okay, old episodes of How Do We Miss That? Again, ad free at the moment. I may put ads on the site and monetize it. I don't know. I'm trying to decide. Right there, I've got YouTube embedded. YouTube. So it automatically pulls the last 6 videos for the channel and has a player embedded, so you can watch any the INN YouTube videos on the site. It automatically pulls. I knew you were going to do that, and I was going to hear my voice again. Shakiness! Stop! You're giving me a seizure.
It'll be in the middle too.
I hope there are no epileptics out there. Sorry, folks.
Keep going with the inception of the movement.
Anyway. No. Okay. And under my nameplate is Indie Media Today. That is my other Substack where I publish all the clips from our other show. And
tell people what the network's doing. You would know that more than everyone.
What is the network doing?
I don't know.
Well, tomorrow night, or actually technically tonight, we got Big Mad Crab is going to be doing Politically Homeless. We're going to have a new one of those at 9 o'clock. I believe he's going to have Snow Himbo with him as co-host. Friday, 2 p.m. Eastern. 2 p.m. Eastern Friday, we've got Tara. And Tara's going to be sitting down and speaking with Angela McArdle from the Libertarian Party, the chairperson of the Libertarian Party. They got a visit from the FBI, and they're going to sit down and talk about that, as well as Rage Against the War Machine, all the other stuff there.
That's still happening?
I don't know. It got delayed. You know, it was supposed to happen in February. Then they pushed it off a couple months. Well, that's a good. I don't know.
No offense. It wasn't delayed. They didn't get money.
Yeah. Tune in to find out. Tune in to find out any more about that. I also asked her about. I asked her to ask about Javier Milei. You know, since our sister Lucy, shout out to Lucy, has been screaming about Javier Milei since before he got elected, and yelling at every libertarian who would listen, Javier Milei, but every libertarian who would listen, lumping every libertarian as the same because they all technically supported this and they championed and they got excited about his win being a libertarian and crediting that. Not all of them did, first of all, but anyway, I asked her to ask Angela about her support for Milei and how that's worked out and how she feels about that now, given what he's done since he's gotten there. So we'll find out if she did that. That's Friday afternoon. Friday night, we're going to have Angel in the afternoon at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 Pacific. He's going to be doing his WrestleMania preview. And it's also episode 50, his 50th live stream. So proud of him. He started live streaming about a year ago. And he's been consistent. Some weeks he's recorded a bunch of stuff. Love Angel, man. That's our brother. So Friday night, I'm going to announce it now. 10:30 p.m. Eastern. We're going to do a Jesse show. It's not live. It's a clip show live. We're going to have a chat. And I stitched together a bunch of songs and spoken word pieces from, in this case, Inauguration Gift. So we're going to have like 10 songs that I'm going to put together. It's about 40 minutes long. And we'll do a 40-minute long show, all Jesse performances, no fluff, no conversation in between, just playing and songs and spoken word and raging and having fun. Can't wait for that. So 10:30 Friday night Eastern.
Great American tradition.
It is. Thank you, Tim Dillon. Saturday, we've got the Pro Wrestling Talk at 8 o'clock with Miss Witchy Perfect and Angel at 8 o'clock. And then at 11:30, Snow Himbo's going to do his gaming stream. He's been doing really well with that last couple weeks. Played Outcast 2, I think, last week. I don't know what he's doing yet this week. And then Sunday night, we'll be back for, how do we miss that? Followed by boats smashing into other boats.
Nice.
And who knows if we'll do anything Monday or Tuesday. Tuesday, there will be another American tradition, a new American tradition, episode 39. Jesse's kid was sick this week. We were going to do it Tuesday. His wife wasn't feeling so great. So he said, let's kick it one more week and we'll be back next Tuesday. And then Wednesday, you guys are right back here doing it over again.
Are you sure about that?
I hope. Should be able to. All right. I think that's it.
So. Oh, by the way, I also want to shout out Pasta. I dialed into Pasta to go. Pasta called me during his show today because I gave him a hard time. I texted him like, "Oh, I guess I don't get phone call status." So of course he picked up the phone. He called me right during the show. Go follow the Pasta to Go channel on Rumble and on YouTube if you haven't yet. Pasta the number 2 Go. He's doing his thing and love him. Shout out to my brother Pasta.
That's a 10.
Cool. Great. Collin, anything else? I think that's it. I think we're good.
I think, well, Indy was here, so he was able to get the analysis better than I did.
Yep.
So,
but
anyway, thank you, Indy, for co-hosting tonight. We should have you again soon.
This was fun.
And then, obviously, you guys we'll be together on Sunday for How Do We Miss That without me. So because I'll be in bed.
Well, remember, kids,
supporting the band. Support in the. Yep. Go ahead.
No, feel free. Do your closing. You can close if you want.
I was gonna say, well, you get to close your show, so I figured I would do. Support independent media, folks. We need it more than ever.
Okay. Keep listening to what Little Birds had to tell you. No, that's the other show. That's the see how you screw this up? See what you do? Remember, kids, labels are bad. Stay independent. Good night, fam.
Have a good week, everyone.
We want to talk right down to earth in a language that everybody here can easily understand.
Bye, have a great time.
Thank you.